Good morning, Mr. Karan. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to talk all about Tom Cruise and his new movie, The Final Reckoning. This message will self destruct and hopefully under 2 hours because we've been getting kind of long recently. My name is Alex from Los Angeles.
And this is Karan from Los Angeles as well.
And welcome to Movies That Shaped Us. We are two longtime friends who grew up on opposite ends of the globe with very different backgrounds, but are both shaped and are still being shaped by the movies we see and love. In each episode, we'll cover a filmmaker, in this case Tom Cruise, who shaped our love of movies. So join us as we explore why they matter and review the three movies in their filmography that made the biggest impact on us. Okay, Mr. Tom Cruise. This is the
Gosh,
episode we've been waiting for, I think, this year to talk about. He's a
yep,
big one.
I've gotten my couch out. I'm about to jump on it. It's gonna be great. And I'm just gonna laugh and point at people, and it's gonna be great.
Well, don't be
No,
glib, though. Don't be glib.
don't be
But
glib. No. No, I have three stories prepared. I'm just gonna regurgitate those about
perfect.
movies and my love of cinema, and then eat popcorn like that.
Yeah,
You know,
shovel it in. Yeah.
awesome, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so Tom, biggest movie star in the world, arguably. I mean, I think maybe unarguable or not arguably now.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's got a new movie out. So we'll talk about The Final Reckoning, which is the last Mission Impossible film, and talk maybe a little bit about just our thoughts on the franchise. But why don't you start, Karan, and talk about your experience with Tom Cruise over the years and when you first knew him and what you think of him?
I mean, this is sort of unanimous for really anybody and everybody living anywhere in the world, which is why he's probably the last movie star and probably the biggest movie star of all time, or at
Hmm.
least in the top three, if you will. But even growing up far away from here in India, as listeners know, like if there was a handful of people that I associated with Hollywood and movies globally, it was Tom Cruise. It was always synonymous, I think. We talked about a couple of such people, but I think he takes the crown of it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the age we are too, right? Like when some of these movies were coming up, that's the time when we were going to theaters or like renting out VHSs and such. And all these movies were like big blockbuster movies. So it's sort of also meeting him at the right age, if you will. But so yeah, he's synonymous, with being a movie star. But he's also a very complicated and interesting movie person, a famous person as well, Like I think even through the course of this podcast, since we started recording, I feel like we've had what two or three eras of Tom Cruise kind of go by, right? And
Yeah.
there are many more before that. And sort of rewatching these movies and thinking about him over the last few years, or since the beginning of time, if you will, to me, like the signature things I think about him are number one, absolute deep commitment to movie making, the theatrical experience, getting people together, and then also the way he embodies his characters. There's always deep commitment to whatever that character is doing. And then everything else sort of is, I think, stems from that. Like you get the energized version of Tom Cruise, you get
Hmm.
the action crazy stunt Tom Cruise, you get the super charming Tom Cruise, charm dialed all the way to the top.
Yeah.
And then you also get the weird, crazy Tom Cruise on and off screen. And they're all, I think, stemming from that place of deep commitment to living this life the way he does. And you can be, and I'm guilty of being sort of judgmental of that and skeptical of that, given everything we know what his personal life. But I think as time has gone by, me as well as the culture overall has just, I think he's worn us down by his commitment, that we all sort of like, sure, you get the crown. We're just going to ignore whatever there it is about you that's sort of weird and such, and just embrace the fact that you're kind of incredible. Nobody else can pull this off, especially in the times we live in with the business of the movies over the last several years, just in general. Like, who has a 50 plus year long career and not just being a character actor, but like an actual movie star who's globally relevant? Nobody has that. So, I mean, he's kind of eating his last, slice of his coconut cake. You
Hmm.
can't snatch it away from him, essentially. But in there is also this very charismatic actor as well. And I think we've talked about people who are so committed or maybe so beautiful and all of that. And he's all those things for sure. But he's also a pretty compelling actor. I mean, you look at, and we'll get into some of those movies, like he's worked with the best of the best. He definitely set a big playbook that many people like Leo and Chalamet and all follow, like kind of working with the best directors, really understanding and learning the craft of filmmaking, pouring himself into it. So there's that side to him too. He just hasn't done much of that in the last many years, and it's almost like these characters of Maverick and Ethan Hunt have kind of become alter egos of him,
Right.
for good or bad. But what can I say? Like he's the greatest, one of the greatest. As much as I like to make him a punching bag as well at times, you still can't help but admire what the guy has achieved. So that was a long response to your question, but what about you?
Yeah, I mean, very similarly. I mean, we both kind of grew up at the same time, even though different places, obviously, but he's always been a movie star. And I was actually
Right.
thinking before we recorded this of other movie stars that was a movie star when I was a kid, was a movie star when I was a young adult, and is still a movie star now. Like usually stars fade, like an Arnold or Jim
Yep,
Carrey or Julia Roberts. The only other person I can think of is maybe Tom Hanks that has been a star my entire life.
pretty
But
much.
Tom Cruise is the other one. And I think he's had just an incredible career in terms of how he's managed it, but also just in terms of how he's sort of shifted sort of what he represents in a way. And it was interesting too, that thinking back on, and we'll talk about sort of my first love of Tom Cruise, but when I was really young in like the 80s and growing up, I wasn't like attracted to the movies that he was doing or the characters he was playing. He plays these really self-assured, cocky guys. Like Top Gun was never a favorite movie of mine at all, and most of the movies he did were adult films. And I was, watching Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Back to the Future and all these more family or kid movies or big sci-fi movies, and would be, more sort of idolizing like a Harrison Ford or Han Solo, even Bill Murray. We talked about Ghostbusters, like that type
Right.
of character. I wasn't really into that self-assured, cocky attitude, which is the whole beginning part of his career. And then I think he kind of like stepped away from that into someone who still always wins in the end. Like he's still a guy who knows how to do everything, but he's not as cocky anymore in a lot of the characters that he plays. And he's doing more interesting films and interesting projects. And that was sort of like the middle part of his career. And now I just think that he is taking the weight on his shoulders of the entire industry and knows that only he can do these movies. And if these movies need to exist, these big blockbuster, shovel the popcorn in your mouth like Tom, hits globally, worldwide, four quadrant without this IP of like Marvel or Star Wars or all these IP driven things, only he can do that. And I think he's saying like to himself, and actually I was watching an interview with Maguire, the director of the last couple of Mission films, where he was saying like when the first times Tom met him, Tom told him, I make blockbuster entertainment. That is what I do. I'm not trying to chase all these other things. Like, this is what I do. And I think now that that
Hmm.
doesn't really exist anymore, like Tom is sort of like the mayor of Hollywood in the sense of like, I'm going to, as Tom Cruise, make sure these movies still get made. Because if I step away and go back to doing more character pieces or working with some other, talented directors like he was doing a lot in his career. And those movies are great, but we will lose something as a species in a way. Like these movies now are only made because he's doing it, and that to me makes me just have endless amounts of respect for him. And he's maybe a little too driven sometimes. He's a little kind of an odd guy, but that intensity you can see on screen, and I love having that intensity off camera as well in terms of the projects that he chooses, his enthusiasm for showing up at all these premieres, promoting, going to the movies too. I think that's really important. I mean, the movies that he does now work better in an audience. Especially we'll talk about, Final Reckoning and sort of some scenes I think just would not at all hit the same way if you're sort of
Oh
alone at
no.
home, renting on iTunes and, watching it on your TV. And I just love that he's still doing it. Because when he steps away from that, I just don't see anyone who could ever kind of fill that void, unless it was all that, IP stuff, which, I love Marvel too, but it's a different kind of thing. And I love how Tom is he's the last one carrying that torch for, it's a poster with a giant head of an actor on it. And you walk in and you're like, I'll get to see that guy's latest movie and get my large popcorn. I'm just gonna walk in and have a good time, and that is really special. And I love Tom for that he's doing that, he's
Yeah,
taking that responsibility.
yeah, I agree. I will say this is maybe a more cynical read on what you said, which is that once his personal life sort of really became, tabloid fodder and everybody knew and all of that stuff that happened. And we'll get into this in one of your movies, a certain director that he shot a movie for multiple years and broke his marriage. I think that experience sort of broke him. Like the movies that he made after that in the middle period, they're all very weird, daring movies, but they're all sort of psychologically pretty challenging.
Hmm.
And so I think a combination of those two, plus also he's a very smart guy. So insight into where the business was headed, that I think he purposefully, but also there was no other option but to step aside from these character driven movies. Because can you imagine him promoting like some character movie without not talking about himself? Because that's going to come up, right? Like it's going to be difficult. So I think what he's chosen is actually smart given everything else in his life and what he believes in, to do movies and these characters that are as sort of, how do I say it? They're not vanilla, but they're not problematic characters. That
No, no.
these are people who are, you know, the simplistic version of a hero, pretty much. You can root for them, you can rally behind them, and then all the press and everything sort of miraculously, envelopes that. So it's very strategic, I think, just given who he is and what his lifestyle choices are, I think. And then the weird thing also is that all these movies, they require such commitment intensity, like we are talking, right? These death-defying stunts, which I kind of feel like you maybe need to be in the Scientology cult or whatever to be able to do this. So there's almost like a symbiotic relationship that I can't make Magnolia Part 2 because of what I believe in, but then what I believe in actually fuels what I am making. So sort of this interesting sort of flywheel that is happening. And for a while, that flywheel was trending downward because people were weirded out by it.
Right.
But he's somehow managed to make the flywheel fly up, which is again incredible. So yeah, I agree with you. At the same time, I feel like there was no other choice.
No,
Also, how do you
true.
stay a famous person for so long, without kind of messing it all up? So this is, as daring as this has been for his life, it's also in a weird way a safer path, just given everything else.
No, that's definitely true. I mean, there was that period of his career, around the couch jumping incident that you referenced
Right.
earlier, where, the projects weren't really connecting. People were sort of starting to get a little, yeah, weirded out by him. And I would, I'm not really sure if he was calculated enough to be like, well, I'm just going to go and try to make these movies to help his career, whether he was thinking, well, this is probably where the industry is going and I want to stay making these,
Yeah, a bit of
four
both,
quadrant films,
maybe.
or if he just kind of lucked into it. He just happened to kind of fall into this thing and be like, oh, wow, this actually maybe is the new groove that I need to be in. And then once he realized that, he doubled down. I mean, since, I think you could say Ghost Protocol, Mission Impossible 4
Right.
was the movie that like was a huge giant hit, kind of brought him back, and then he's starting to realize, oh, this is maybe what I need to be doing now. Just sticking in this one lane of these giant four quadrant films would have a lot of action, a little bit of humor. I'm playing my Tom Cruise persona in different situations, and that's what people want. They don't want
Right.
me to do these other things because he definitely was making some pretty odd choices. Great films during that time. But definitely some odd choices that he wouldn't have been making in the 90s or the 80s or even now. I think he's it'll be very interesting. We'll talk about what he's going to do next and what we think he should do next. But I think he's at a very interesting point in his career too, where he's sort of climbed to the highest height of this version of what he can deliver. And is he still going to try to do it or pivot again? Because he's definitely
Right.
pivoted a couple times in his career, and he's a super smart guy that really knows
Yeah.
what he's doing and really knows what audiences want. I mean, I think that is what I also love about him too. He's always thinking about the audience. He knows he's making
Hmm.
movies for us. And I know sitting there in the theater, I'm like, this is Tom is entertaining me. He's not like trying to work through some artistic vision or do whatever. It's like he's there to entertain the audience, and that is maybe what has led to his success too, because he's not thinking about himself or his career maybe in a way. He's like, well, what do people want? I'm just gonna do that because that is a surefire way to success. To just give the people what they want. But we'll see. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see where he goes after this film, which is doing very well. And unless you have anything else to say, why don't we move into the film then, the Final Reckoning? Do you want to introduce the film and then give us your thoughts about it?
Let's do it. Okay, so the movie at hand is Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, directed by Christopher McQuarrie, of course, starring Tom Cruise, Haley Atwell, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, a whole bunch of other people. Quick logline: Our lives are the sum of our choices. Tom Cruise is Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. That is that is it,
That's a
which
statement.
is hilarious.
You read the poster, but that's cool. I mean, that
Sure.
it is what it is on the tin.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe start with your views on Mission. I know we've covered a couple of the movies before, and I'll put the links down below to the other Mission Impossible movies we have covered. But maybe start with that because this is meant to be the final one, and then kind
Yeah.
of get into your thoughts on this specific, the final piece of the Mission franchise, at least for now.
Yeah. I mean, growing up, I mentioned this a little bit earlier in front of our like travel movies and such that these movies for me were basically the travelogue, passport movies because you got to travel to different places. The action was great. They looked really cool and slick. I mean, especially the first three, like that's sort of in that peak Tom Cruise era look. Like he looks amazing. I mean, that was my introduction to him. Like, okay,
Hmm.
this is, a guy who looks cool and looks great and has it all together and can do anything. Not much has changed actually when I say that
He
since
still
that
looks
time.
great. You're right. He still does look great for
Yeah,
62.
yeah, for the
You
most
know,
part. For his age, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
But I don't think I ever really understood or tried to understand the plot of these movies or what they actually meant, what were they saying. Some of them didn't even make sense to me, but it wasn't about that. And then suddenly, to your point, Ghost Protocol hits and everything changes. Suddenly, I sort of looked at these movies in a totally different way. Like to me, they were always sort of the second cousin of Bond movies or even, the Bourne movies.
Hmm.
And then something happens with Ghost Protocol where they kind of up level the movies and sort of find their own niche where not only are first of all it's this whole death defying stunt thing which kind of they is completely corner the market on. Nobody else is doing that the way, and that sort of becomes a selling point of what is he going to do next and where are we going to go for
Hmm.
that. So it's not just about the globe trotting but it's more about what's going to happen along with the globe trotting part. And then the second, I mean, the Bond movies are sort of fun. They were more fun earlier, but they were also problematic. But the Daniel Craig version, I mean, they're fun in a different way, but I associate mission movies to be just with more fun. They're sexier. There's a lot of humor in them, the camaraderie between all the different characters. That's always been there pretty much. And I think Ghost Protocol kind of to me might be in my top movies and when it comes to the mission movies because it's just so fun.
It is. Yeah, it's great.
And not a single second is wasted. Like you're in the seat, in for an action-packed ride right at from the get-go. And it's propulsive and it just keeps moving. And then, of course, it keeps going from there. With the next one, Rogue Nation, also very good. And then I have a bit of a hot take. Like Fallout is amazing in its sequences, but as a movie as a whole, I think it has a bit of a hat of self-seriousness to me, which I actually don't particularly enjoy with these movies. I like the Ghost Protocol tone more. Let's just
The
say that,
fun,
which is sort of
more
more
lighthearted
fun.
tune. Yeah, tone.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I mean, I remember the first, this is horrible. People are going to hate me for this. I slept through Fallout twice in
Really?
the talking scenes, especially the
Wow.
scene where all the trees are there in London and Elsa and him are walking and all. I
Uh-huh.
never made past that twice,
Wow.
which is horrible. So there's some, but then the scenes that do work are absolute epic level. The Henry Cavill sequence, the plane sequence, the bathroom fight. Like there's some incredible sequences. But I will say the movie feels like a grown up movie. That movie, I don't know. It
Hmm.
feels like they've sort of hit like another level. Um, so and then I'll reserve my thoughts on these last two, which to me is I think a bit of a letdown or quite a bit of a letdown from where the peaks that this franchise had achieved. But overall, I if this is the last movie and if you're kind of doing a full run through of the movies, like what a great franchise this has been. It's any one of these movies I can pop up, even though the recommended way to watch them is in the theater, but you can enjoy them however you want. Like this is not a movie you need preparation. In fact, I've watched more of these movies over and over again than the other franchises that I mentioned in my life. So there's something about them. You know you're going to get your money's worth. It's going to be fun. You're going to go places. But what grounds all of this madness and action is him. Like you
Right.
believe it,
Hmm.
and that's like his everything you said before about his commitment, his intensity, it comes through, and that's what's special. Otherwise, there's so many globe-trotting action adventures, but there's something about the fact that he believes in these, he's risking his life to make these things happen, like you said, for the audience. That gift just keeps giving, and so it's incredible that in this storied career of Tom Cruise, there's this, amazing 8 movie franchise that it'll be on his obituary, of
Hmm.
course,
Right.
so yeah, these movies are very dear to me. We'll talk about the new one in a bit, but what's your relationship with the Mission series?
Yeah, I've loved the series as well, and I think even from the beginning, and we'll talk actually about the first Mission Impossible
Right,
movie. We actually covered already, but we'll talk about it again. That was really the one that made me love Tom Cruise, and one of my favorite theater going experiences and movies and everything. And Mission Impossible 2, also one of my favorite movies of all time. I've already seen it 3 times this year. Like I watched it in the lead up to Mission, this latest one during my full rewatch. And it's one of those movies where when I watch it, immediately when it's over, I have to go back and watch it again because it hits me in all the ways that I like. So even that one, I think the only weak entry for me is 3. I think it's a terrible film, but beyond that one, this franchise just has so much to offer. It's so diverse. Each movie is really a different tone. Even when McQuarrie kind of took over, I think Rogue Nation's very different than Fallout and even different than
hmm
Dead Reckoning and Final Reckoning. I like that the tones are kind of shifting, but what grounds it all, like you said, is Tom and the amazing stunts that he does, which you just want to see what is he going to do. And yes, the plots aren't as important. It really is now about the relationships between the characters and then the what Tom is doing. And I think
right,
that's like super exciting and always going to be entertaining. And I thought Fallout is my favorite of all of them actually, but I can understand it. They sort of try to do Nolan essentially, like a self-seriousness to it. When in the context of that film, I thought really worked. And I think that is the height of sort of what I would love out of a Mission franchise, but I love the diversity, and that's something that Tom
right,
also brought to these films too. As a producer of every single one, he wants them to feel different with this connecting DNA, and I think that is what
right,
makes this series so unique. And the quality, again, other than 3, I think being really terrible, the quality among them is actually very good for a franchise this long. Not only long in terms of 8 films, but over 30 years now they've been making
it's
these.
incredible.
And Bond has a lot of heights, but also a lot of real lows. And now
Yeah.
Star Wars got run into the ground, and Marvel's got a lot of ups and downs. So I think this franchise over that amount of time is just very impressive that it's been able to keep the quality level, keep entertained. I mean, and you're right, rewatchability is off the charts, except for 3 for
Yeah.
me. But I mean, I just throw one of these movies on, it just puts a smile on my face instantly, especially MI2. Maybe one day we'll cover that movie on the podcast because I know it's a pretty hot take. But yeah,
It's a
why don't
hot
we
take, but
then?
I still enjoy it,
It's so good.
Yeah,
It's so good.
I still
What
enjoy
what
it.
so why don't we jump into Final Reckoning then, the last one. So what were your takes on Final Reckoning?
Okay. This is not a hot take because I've sort of seen this going around quite a bit, but I think this is my least favorite movie in the entire franchise. I
Okay.
was, I mean, of course, there's a lot to love about it too, and I'm going to put a pin on that, which is, or maybe I'll just get into it, which is like the
Yeah.
final stunt,
Yeah.
the final 30 minutes, and the whole plane stunt is just absolutely incredible, and it almost saves the movie pretty much because that's what you sort of walk out with, and you still can't get over the fact how they did it and how is this even possible, and just the thinking, the filmmaking around it, his commitment. Like every time you think that, oh, he's done, like you can't top what he's done, and he tops it, and that is one of those stunts. So that's like an if this is the final thing we remember this franchise with, that's such a great way to go out. So that's incredible. But the rest of the movie, in my mind, the fact that it took 2 hours to finally get to the last 30 minutes of actual action, that is not what I expect from a mission movie or any movie that's a blockbuster. And especially a mission movie, and to the point that you were making earlier, which I believe in, that Tom knows what the audience wants. So to me, it feels like something got lost somewhere, or the wrong lessons were learned from the previous one, which I know didn't do so well. And there were problems with that for sure, with, entity and this whole sort of villain and what have you. But I think to me the biggest signature of these movies is like show not tell versus this entire movie, the 2 hours is basically tell
Hmm.
and not show, and it's all super self-serious. The humor and the sexiness from this movie is totally gone. Yes, he's in his boxer briefs for a big chunk of the
For
movie.
a big
If
chunk of the movie,
that's
yeah.
right, if
And he
that's
looks
your,
good. Yeah.
yeah, he looks good. If that's your take, great. But there's no sizzle, there's no fun, there's no humor at all in the movie. There's no joy of like going to different places. You're mostly indoors in bunkers and places. And then the plot, we've talked about it. Like the plot doesn't matter, but then when you keep talking about the plot 30 times and it's all serious, you're seeing like nuclear, missiles or every nuclear country being, plotted up, the seriousness is going up and up, but then nothing is happening. And you can't, because normally the plot doesn't make sense, but it's, you can sort of laugh it out. But here you can't even laugh it out because these are serious things and the whole tone is serious. So the impact on me was basically me fidgeting in my seat, which was right next to you because we watched this movie together. That's what was going through my head. I was like, when will we get to the real stuff? And then a couple sort of minute detail, but I think pretty important, like not to spoil, but one key character doesn't make it to the end. And the way just they handled that to me just didn't land. And that reminds me of another big thing of the storytelling of like going backward and forward. It happens so much in the movie, which again, I understand like this is the final movie in the franchise. At least that's how it's marketed to us. Maybe a little bit of homage to all the previous movies is fine. Like Angela Bassett's voice in the beginning to kind of commemorate that, great. But we got so much of that and connections and, flashbacks. And sure, it's fun to see the Dalton guy from the first movie, but also I'm like, really? There's so much of that stuff, almost like they got Marvel lessons that, oh, we need to connect everything, which is not what they ever did in these movies. And then the final cherry on the cake of the bad cake in my mind is, Tom, you can do this. You're the only one who can do this. Oh, why don't you become the in charge of the entity? And I get it. Yes, he's saving the movies and what have you, but I want that to come from other people. Let Spielberg say that. Tom, great job. Top Gun Maverick saved the movies. But to be so self-serious, have no fun, and all of that, but then also wear this mantle yourself of like, I am doing everything, it's a bit much to me. It's a bit much. So that said, the final stunt is great. The submarine stunt is almost like a silent movie, beautifully shot, really, really well done. I really enjoyed that. So it's not, I mean, it's still fun, right? Like you're there, people are having a good time, you're in a big crowd. So it's not like I'm like, I don't recommend it. No, of course. I mean, how can you not go watch this movie? You have to. But I was disappointed, sadly. And because of things that I know they know so well how to do. So I'm just perplexed by what happened. In fact, the previous one, which was sort of boring, but it had the fun airport sequence. It had the fun little yellow car beetle sequence. And there was
Hmm.
this great sizzling chemistry between the two of them, and the underwater stuff was great. Like now, in my estimation, that movie was better than this one. So that's me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I felt that the two action sequences in this movie, I think, are some of the best I've ever seen any movie ever do. And maybe the plane stunt
Yes,
is the most amazing sequence easily in all
ever
these
done.
films. But like, I just is it just insane. And
It's
the fact that
breathtaking.
just, I mean, unbelievable. And I was thinking too that the fact that Tom does all his own stunts is, yeah, like cool that you think that he's an actor, he's dedicating himself, he's doing it. It's obviously a marketing hook. But what it really brings is a appreciation for stunts in a way that stunt doubles, which again is a great profession, and they've done some incredible stunts, especially in these old like 70s Bond films, but you can never get close to the camera. They always have to be wide shots,
No.
or because you don't want to be like, oh wait, that's not Harrison Ford, that's not Roger Moore. But because he's doing them, the angles they're able to get and the close-ups where you can really feel the danger and the elements basically that this person is
Yeah,
in,
I mean
much
his
like all the
hair is like all
and his
over,
skin is getting pulled back. I mean, I
Right.
have never seen anything like that end sequence. And because it was at the end of the movie, they always say like you want to at least end with a positive so you don't leave the theater being like, well, that was, kind of lame. So for me, that sequence kind of saved the movie from being a bad movie. I'll say that. That and the submarine. I think you that was also just absolutely like on the edge of my seat.
Amazing.
It's very similar to the sequence from the first film where he's dangling on the wire, where it's really silent and the whole theater just sort of like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? I felt that same way in that sequence. Those two things were just insane, and it's really worth the price of admission. And I'm obviously going to see this movie again, and those would be the things that I'm kind of waiting for. And unfortunately, that means I have to sit through the rest of the movie, which I have a lot of the same issues you do with it. I think it's just way too much talking in rooms, way too much plot, dialogue. For the first maybe like hour, really kind of like nothing happens until the submarine sequence, and
Nothing
then it starts
happens.
revving up. And then once they get to South
Right.
Africa and are in that bunker and the plane is going there, then all of a sudden I was like, okay,
Last 30 minutes.
this feels like Mission Impossible. I'm all in. But yeah, it was really interesting. I have sort of like two issues with this, which some of them actually are similar issues in the last movie too. And the first one is that it is just like too much setup and explanation. Where because this movie was originally one, and they split it into two, and then because of the
Right.
strikes, the second one got delayed. That then they decided to make it a standalone, so they had to go back and rework the first half of the movie with the assumption that no one's seen the other one, and that meant a lot of repeating things we already know, explaining things we already
Insane.
know, and I'm sort of like, okay, like I get sort of what you're doing, but also we're in the age where people can like rent this and rent the first
People have
one and
watched this
watch it.
movie.
And, or like
Yeah.
look it up on Wikipedia. Like it's not really that complicated. You don't need to tell us the same thing like six times. Like
No.
explain what the entity is, explain this, explain that. So I think they just kind of they were too unsure of what their audience was going to understand, and I think that kind of got away with them a little bit. And the other thing that you were kind of touching on this a little bit too, just about the why does Tom Cruise have to say to himself he's saving the world and the industry. What I also always liked about Ethan Hunt's character through most of the films up until the last two was that he's just one guy in the IMF, and there's a ton of agents, and he's not anything special or really known. He's just the guy that, at least with his team, he just tries, the most crazy things, and it always works. Like he's an amazing agent who can do amazing stuff, but he doesn't have like a reputation for that, and no one was like acting like he's this like messiah character who's the chosen one, and oh my God, Ethan
Exactly. In fact,
Hunt.
people make fun of him. Like, who's this guy who's doing this stuff, And I
Exactly, and
love
that
that when they
I
do
me
that.
too. That he's Tom Cruise playing an
Yeah.
everyman sounds funny to say that, but the character was meant to just be another agent. Even James Bond, in a way, in those films, he has sort of a reputation, but it's not like everyone is like worshiping at his feet, and it's like the entire MI6 is just
No.
James Bond. And in this movie, I felt it was just Tom. Not even really his team. It's like, well, the only person going to do this is Tom. You're the only person, or not Ethan Hunt. And that sort of glorification of Ethan Hunt, I just felt was not right for the tone of these movies. And they did it in the last movie a little bit too,
Totally.
and I felt kind of uncomfortable with that. But this movie, they leaned into it more. So just tonally, maybe fine. They're going to try this out, and Ethan can be like Batman in one movie and just sort of see what that's like. Because again, the tones are, different in each one. But I didn't like that choice, like narratively, to kind of do that. It made
No.
Ethan be less interesting to me. Because, like, well, of course I know he's going to do it. Everyone says he's going to do it, and then he does it. Instead of
Right.
like, oh my God, there's no way he's going to be able to jump off the verge, or like, wait, you're going
There's
to
no
hold your breath
surprise. There's
underwater
no
for
magic in that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I think those two things for me, like the plotting felt very messy, and then the tone being off with Ethan, that made it hard to say the movie was. I think it was fine for me. Definitely in my ranking, I would put it right above. I just think three is just a disaster. And this at least has these two good action sequences for me. Elevate the movie to be fine. And if those were not there or to the caliber of the
Oh,
stuff
I
they
would
were
have
doing in
walked out.
three, then I'd be like, this movie's actually bad. And it's the first one that, is well, three is pretty bad too, but this is actually like just not a good film. So, it definitely was
I have to
disappointing in that
rewatch
sense.
three. I don't remember.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I think it's awful. But yeah, this is definitely disappointing as a whole film. However, I think the ending to me was at least enough where if you watched all the movies again, which I'm sure I'm going to do often, like a marathon, and I'll be satisfied of being like, okay, the plane sequence saves it enough. And then I did like how at the very end, it wasn't something where they kill Ethan Hunt or have a big retirement scene with him like they actually did in 3, where the little, oh, you're retired now, here's a little party at the office. They make it enough where like he's either leaving or he's not, and they leave it open. And I thought that was a very great last scene. He's sort of saying hi to all the guys on his team and then walks away into the night. And that I liked. So I thought the ending of this movie was enough to save it for me. But and I definitely would recommend it. Like people have to see this in the theater. Even if you just walk in for the last 30 minutes, you will be more entertained than anything you've ever seen. For that biplane stunt is just historic. I mean, that is a historic thing to put on film, and I'm just happy that he did that. I wish it was in a better movie. So I think we're sort of on the
Yeah,
same. I
I
might have
know.
liked it a little better than you, but we're both of us were disappointed, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
Which is so sad because, yeah, I mean, first of all, yeah, like to your point, there shouldn't have been two movies. Like if this were one movie, I
mhm.
think we would have been fine,
Yes,
pretty much,
yes,
you know?
right, right, and yeah, I think that's what would be. There's a very good one movie in here. The last one was too long. This one is too long, and there's too much plot that
Yeah.
is unnecessary. I think they definitely could have gotten this to a solid like
Too much plot.
2.5 hour great film. You save some of these action sequences, which the last one, which I think is good, not great. Like I liked the last movie, but I wasn't blown away by it. But there are those scenes, like you mentioned, that are just amazing. The train sequence,
Yeah.
the motorcycle jump, the car chase in Rome, like
Right. The train
that stuff
sequence.
is
Yeah.
amazing. So there's enough here where they could have, kind of salvage it. Who knows? Maybe McQuarrie at some point will go back and do like the Final Reckoning final cut or something and try to tackle it again. I could, maybe see them doing that at some point. I think it would be an
That
interesting
would be amazing if they
experiment
did that.
because there's something in here that
Yeah, totally
definitely
agree.
definitely can work. But well, that was Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning. So now we're going
Yeah. Too
into
bad.
Tom's. Yeah, too bad. Too bad. Now we're getting into Tom's filmographies. This is the part of the show where we go over each of our top three. So we're going to start with our first love, the movie that first made us fall in love with Tom Cruise and realize he's the best movie star of all time. And then we're going to get to the masterpiece, the masterpiece performance from Tom that we think really exemplifies him and why we love him. And then finally the wild card, where maybe Tom kind of went on a limb, tried something different. Maybe it didn't work, maybe it did, but it's a movie we think is important to talk about, with our personal, love of Tom. So, with all that being said, why don't we start off with your first love, Karan, of Mr. Tom Cruise? Which film are we covering?
All right. So my first love is Jerry Maguire from 1996, directed by Cameron Crowe, starring Tom Cruise, of course, Cuba Gooding Jr., Renee Zellweger, the cute kid, whose name I'm forgetting. Quick log line. When a sports agent has a moral epiphany and is fired for expressing it, he decides to put his new philosophy to the test as an independent agent with the only athlete who stays with him and his former colleague. That's a good description.
Mhm.
So I watched this movie. I don't think I watched it when it came out, but I remember watching it on VHS, and it's one of the first movies that I saw of him. And I just was instantly struck by just the way he carried himself. That's my memory of him. And then the interactions he had with the kid. And there's something very moving and poignant about that moment, the moments that he shares with the kid. And that's sort of my memory of him. And that was enough for, teenage old me to kind of recognize that this is movie star, this
Hmm.
magic. There's like a halo around this person, just the way he looks, the way he carries himself, like charm to up the wazoo. That's what I remember of this movie. And then as I grew up, this movie has sort of become a meme, in terms of its memorable lines, not one, but two, but like the eight memorable lines from this movie that everybody and anybody knows, from "you complete me," "you had me at hello," and "show me the money," and it goes on and on. And I hadn't seen this movie since, but it was enough for me to put it on this list even without rewatching it, because this was sort of that first love moment. Like you see
Hmm.
somebody and you instantly know that this is a movie star. And then rewatching it recently, and I've watched it since again, actually twice in preparation of this movie. This is sort of a genius performance and a genius movie, and I'll share my thoughts on the movie in a second. But when it comes to him, it's like a fully realized, fully embodied, throbbing character in my mind. Like I was not expecting that because I just in my mind I was expecting memes, memorable lines, charm.
Yes.
Instead, this movie is actually about somebody who is losing their mind actually in the very beginning of the movie. And I again we'll talk more about the movie later. It's just geniusly constructed. But yeah, you see Tom Cruise sort of questioning the way he's led his life up to that point. And it's almost like the Tom Cruise that we know of, like cocky and arrogant, like you were saying, that is Jerry Maguire part one as
Mm-hmm.
we meet him. And then
Mm-hmm.
it all crumbles from there. And then it's this it's sort of Tom Cruise as we know him now starts to emerge in the part two of the movie where he's sort of writing his own playbook. There are questions, there are doubts, but what is unwavering is self-belief that I'm going to do something differently. Who's with me? And and then of course the movie is genius, which they don't sort of bow down to him. He's not the martyr, messiah, whatever. He's just a regular guy who's basically had a meltdown
Mm-hmm.
and is trying to figure his life out, and then the relationships that he builds and how much he succeeds with them, how much he fails with them. And there's more learning through that too. It's once again, like once you're in the post-traumatic period of a meltdown, you think you found love and you're ready for it, but you're not actually. There's more learning, there's more falling to be done. So it's an amazing performance and an amazing movie in my mind. Like the movie, I was worried that it'll feel very dated and he would feel very dated, but it feels so crisp and sharp while being very earnest and being very sincere. And it's over the top, but he sells it, throughout the entire movie, the ups and downs of this character. And you root for him. And, I ended up getting emotional watching this movie at so many points. So yeah, I'm so glad that we're talking about this movie because we've never talked about this movie before.
Yeah.
And this movie kind of singularly stands out in my mind in his filmography. But yeah, what's your impression of Tom in this movie?
Yeah, I'd seen this not in the theaters when it came out, but on VHS tape, probably around the Oscars or right after, because it got a lot of Oscar nominations, including for him, I believe, right? This is the only time he's ever been nominated for a lead actor role, which, oh, wait, I'm sorry. He was nominated for Born on the Fourth of July. So this is the second one,
No.
right? The second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Born on the Fourth of
Yeah,
July.
I think so.
And it definitely is just a unbelievable performance by him in all the ways that you say. I think I mean, the Cameron Crowe stuff, when we get into the movie, is kind of pretty cheesy and I think a little bit dated in style, but Tom can
Oh
sell
yeah.
all of that easily. Like his charisma and charm, and again, some of the stuff I'm like, oh, this line should not work, but it totally does, and you're just like, oh my God, yes, you're
He
totally
sells
invested
it.
because of what he's able to do, and I think too the way that the camera and the way that Cameron Crowe shoots him in this is just like 2000 watts of a movie star. Like he fills the frame, he looks incredible. The lighting on him is just like unbelievable. And like you're watching this being like, yeah, this is like the biggest star in the world. And Cameron Crowe knew how to light him and put him in these scenes. But yet at the same time, he is acting more than I think maybe he does in some other movies. He's really not playing the Tom, that I was, that you were mentioned, right? That really cocky kind of Tom. It is a fully fleshed out character that you believe. You believe he's going through this like heartache and this midlife crisis essentially, and had this quest for
Yeah.
love and all these different things that he's trying to do. Because not really much happens in the movie actually, but you're just still invested because you care about this person and what's going to happen to him. And I think that's a lot to do with like it's Tom Cruise as this sports agent, and you want him to succeed, even though he kind of put his foot in his mouth in the beginning, or might be too cocky or too arrogant in the beginning. But you're never turning against him, no matter what, because of that star power that he has. And I think this movie too. You mentioned the kid, that his chemistry with that kid is so good. Their scenes together are just so great and magical. And Tom doesn't have a lot of movie experience around kids. It's usually not something that he does, puts himself in that scenario very often. And I think it's just incredible what he's able to how he's able to act around this kid, how the kid, is able to steal some lines from him and be really cute but not overshadow him. And yeah, I think he had more chemistry with the kid than he did Renee Zellweger, in my opinion. I was like, oh, this is the sort of the relationship I want to see. But no, this is it's a classic, almost like masterpiece performance from him. I don't think the movie is necessarily as good as his performance, but this is a signature Tom Cruise performance that is going to be in his obituary where they put in maybe like 6 movies. I think definitely Jerry Maguire will be in there as that character. I believed him when he showed me the money. He was like, I'll show him the money." Or his flip, that quitting scene too, I think, which is interesting watching
It's
that because we don't
incredible.
really see Tom do that kind of stuff. Like even he says, "What do you think? I'm all just gonna like flip out?" And he's sort of goofy, playing almost this like Jim Carrey-esque scene, and that's not something he normally ever does. But it doesn't feel out of character. It feels out of character in the sense of like this guy is breaking down, but it feels in character in that like you believe that he's at this point where this is how he's gonna act. And it just that scene in particular, I was like, whoa, like Tom doesn't really do this very often, especially in a movie like this. It's a hard kind of tone to walk, and I just think he does such a great job. So I am glad I don't come back to this movie very often. I don't think I've actually seen it since college. I think I watched it once in college just to be like, oh yeah, I do like this movie. It's a good performance, but I don't like come back to this a lot. So it was nice to kind of go back and just see, Tom really at the height of all of his powers in the 90s. I mean, just like you've never seen a movie star look this good on screen. Just
It's
Cameron Crowe
lights
knows
out.
knows what he's doing.
Totally. But to like we're saying, like it's a movie star performance, but it's also very character driven, because there's
Hmm.
just so many layers, and that's kudos to him, but also to the writing and the directing of the movie that Cameron Crowe sort of knows how to extract that from him. Because yeah, this person is a version of Tom, and that's true for all movie star,
Right.
performances, right? You always see a version of them, but it's almost like flipping it on its head, but making it believable and an everyday guy kind of person. And then I think the other signature thing about the movie is the relationships with other people. I mean, the kid,
Hmm.
like we already talked about, but even Cuba Gooding
Yeah.
Jr. and even Renee Zellweger. And first of all, those two are also incredible. Like the entire supporting cast of this
Oh
movie is
yeah.
incredible, which is,
Hmm.
I think, so crucial for. I mean, I guess I would classify this as a rom-com, but it's so crucial as for rom-coms, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm always like they don't make him like this because the secret ingredient of a great rom-com is of course the lead pairing, but then everybody else has to kind of shine. I mean, you didn't even mention Regina King. Like all
Right.
these people, they feel fully fleshed out, that you understand why would Renee Zellweger kind of on a whim say, "Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to
Right.
support that." And there's just hints of that even in the plane scene in the beginning where she's listening to, some woman like flirt with Tom, and she sort of leaned in and kind of imagining that wouldn't it be cool? Like she's almost the audience surrogate. Like, wouldn't
Right.
it be cool to be with Tom? Like this guy seems, obviously handsome, has it all together, and also fighting for the right thing. Like he wants to do something different,
Hmm.
and go against the grain. And that's attractive, I think. And she's the only one who sees that. And then same goes for Cuba Gooding and his family. Like, I'm not a big sports person, but I've heard sports people talk about this movie, like the agent world and the dilemma and dramas of sort of sports people and these athletes and the one upship that happens like off the field in terms of what endorsements are you getting and all of that. It's captured so nicely in this movie. Like it kind of draws you in from a screenplay level. Like I don't know anything about this world, but I'm totally drawn into this world. But it's also fun, but it's also very human. Like you
Hmm.
realize that, yeah, they want the money, but you see their family, how close knit they are. Like, and Regina King, like, she's not just making an appeal to just be rich, but this is about the family and getting paid for what, one deserves. So,
Yeah.
in a way, all these people are sort of fighting for, who they think that they should be, even though if they don't know it fully yet. Yeah, and that's the movie, right? Like everybody's trying to find themselves, and then Tom is at the center of that. He's the catalyst and the enabler for all these people to kind of realize their dreams. So it's a great ensemble cast as well, because I don't associate the later era Tom, even though some of the mission movies are about team, but the last two have kind of left this taste in my mouth of like it's all about Tom.
Right.
And it
Right.
was, fun to go back and watch this movie and see him play off against all these different people and match them, beat them at their energy. And last thing I say is that, it's hard to now imagine Tom as a romantic lead because of everything from his personal life, and he's been playing Ethan Hunt and saving the world and the movies and for so long that he's almost alien-like in my mind that it's hard to imagine him be romantic with anybody. I do think there are moments in this movie where there is this tenderness with Renee Zellweger's character where I did buy it, and maybe because she's playing the audience surrogate, like we're
Hmm.
also falling for him in the movie.
Right.
And it was fun to see that because you don't get to see that anymore, and we haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah, it was interesting. He's an actor that I've never really felt has had romantic chemistry with any of his female leads, except
No,
for, again, I'll throw Mission Impossible 2 out there. That's the one I sort of feel a little bit of it. And this one, that's an interesting point about the audience surrogate. I think that is why it does work on a certain level, though I still feel like it's more of like a brother sister kind of thing. I don't, but that's just him. It's not the movie. That's just Tom
no,
Cruise. I don't really buy as like a romantic lead, but yeah, like the movie overall, I do think is still very entertaining. Really, like just a character drama. It's a character ensemble
right.
drama, and that's basically it. I do feel that I've never been a huge Cameron Crowe fan. Not that I've disliked him, but I was never super into him. And I think the style and just the tone of his dialogue does feel sort of old fat, like dated, not in like a negative way, but there's a period of time where this
Yeah,
was a thing, and now they just don't. No, people don't talk like this in movies, and the lighthearted kind of almost sort of Annie Hall-ish kind of. I mean,
yeah, it's
maybe that's
very
not the best
earnest.
comparison. Yeah, that and the sort of the fun sort of cutaways to the agent and to the playfulness of the filmmaking, I think just again felt very 90s
Right.
to me. But it's the great lines, script that even when it kind of feels like it's not really working, Tom's selling it. It's a classic, yeah, I think rom-com or just romantic drama, or it's a classic 90s film, and just with anchored with that incredible Tom performance that I just was very surprised seeing it again after 20 years. I'm like, wow, this actually really, he's really acting in this. And it's really him, carrying so much of this film, even though, like
Totally.
you said, the ensemble's great too. But yeah, Jerry Maguire is a movie that I think is a classic, and I think will still live on to be one. Even though I'm probably not going to watch it often because again, I'm just not really Cameron Crowe guy.
Yeah, I'm not either, but there's something about this. Maybe I just was in a mood that the nostalgia around it
Yeah.
was just charming because we
Yeah.
don't have this anymore in the movies. And
We
it
don't.
was, and then I don't know, there's something prescient about this movie just given the age we are at. Like we're still older than Tom's character in the movie, but it felt more prescient than when I first watched it. Obviously, what life had I lived by at that time, right?
Right,
So
right.
now it's like, oh, you've seen all the stuff you know how things work, corporations, this and that, and we are sort of in that midlife time where
Yeah.
I certainly have questions of like, what should I do next? What do I value? What do I don't? And what have you? So it kind of hit me in that sense, very, very deeply actually. And I think in that sort of vein, either you can make something really sort of sarcastic and biting, or you make it earnest and tender. And this is what that is. And I like that. I would like the other version too, and I would watch Tom do that as well. But for where I was in my head, I like this one,
Yeah.
Just it's just something sweet about it.
Absolutely. And I think this time in his career, too, he can do
Yeah,
that. Whereas in the 80s, he would have just been the cocky sports agent who then gets fired and then does his own thing and is successful. But there's an earnestness and also emotional vulnerability
right,
that at this time in his career, he doesn't really get into at this level, especially when it comes to like failing at the thing you're supposed to be kind of good at, right? He's supposed to
right.
be this great sports agent. He gets fired. His career's falling apart. Like everything that he's supposed to be good at, he can't do.
Marriage.
Right,
And even
exactly right.
that,
The
like
the engagement
Kelly
thing, yeah.
Preston, like he's sort of dicked around by her. He's
Yeah.
like like he has a scar on his face because of she slapped him or whatever. So
Hmm.
that's not something Tom would do.
Right,
Or
right. So it's just
show that
it's
side of him.
unique and this time period in his
Yeah.
career that he's now opening up these avenues and then taking it to some interesting places, which will cover some of those films that follow this. And I think this was a movie that he needed to do before doing films like Magnolia and Eyes Wide Shut that we will be
Right.
getting to.
All right. So with that, what is your first love of Tom
So
Cruise?
my first love is the first Mission Impossible movie from 1996, directed by Brian De Palma, starring Tom Cruise, John Voight, and Emmanuel Bert. And the IMDb plot summary: an American agent under false suspicion of disloyalty must discover and expose the real spy without the help of his organization. So this is a movie we have covered before, actually very early on, I think, in our show around amazing theater experiences. And this was the first Tom Cruise movie I ever saw in a movie theater. And like
Oh,
I was
wow.
mentioning in earlier in the episode, the movies that he was making in the 80s and even early 90s just were not the types of movies I was watching at that age. You know, I was like 8, 9, 10. I'm not going to be watching Cocktail or the Firm or Interview with the Vampire. Like those
Right.
are either adult movies or even Top Gun. I remember that being at a friend's house and they put it in and I'm like, I don't like this. Like this isn't good. I don't care. Like, can we just watch Star Wars? Like, what are we doing? So this movie though was with the right time, with the right movie, and in a role where he's like a cool spy doing cool spy stuff. And I was immediately like, oh my God, like I love Tom Cruise. Like this literally is, I remember being in the theater being like, this actor is amazing. And I want to make sure that I go back and watch his old other films and follow his career and just this intensity that he has in this film is just undeniable. And I do like the fact that it is like touching like you mentioned a little bit with Jerry Maguire too, where he is a spy, but everything sort of like falls apart for him. Like he loses his team. He doesn't know what's going on. The IMF has disavowed him. They think he's the bad guy. So he is put up against a lot of challenges that then he has to overcome. And you know he can because he's Tom Cruise and he's the best. But it's not something where everything is sort of like handed to him and he's able to just be amazing. Like James Bond just walks in the room and does everything right. I sort of
Right.
like that he was under that challenge. And I think this is also just another important movie to him, just as a movie star. First movie he produced. And also, I do recall like watching some coverage on Entertainment Tonight at the time when this movie came out, where they were hyping up the stunt in this film where he jumps out of the restaurant when there's an explosion, all the water sort of spills out about
Hmm.
20 minutes into the movie. And there, I remember just being like, "Whoa, Tom is doing this," and they're like, "Yeah, it's really dangerous, the amount of water and this explosion, and we wanted the specific shot, and we wanted his face is just going to be in it, so now he has to be the one doing it." I just remember thinking as a kid, like, "Wow, that's incredible! Like, I didn't know actors could do this." And this is what back then, before then, he became known as this. So it's just interesting to see the beginnings of all the things we know him as now, sort of starting in this movie. But yeah, I just love the film, which I'll get into in a second. But what are your impressions of Mission Impossible #1?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously the first mission I saw too. I didn't see it in the theater. I wish I had, but I saw it on VHS and kind of I was alluding to earlier, like the plot and stuff was not something that I was really following when I first saw it and didn't really fully understand what was even
No,
happening,
I was
but
so confused.
he was lights out.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it doesn't all fully hang together, I think even now. But yeah, he was sort of lights out movie star and I like what you just said, like there's like a it's so hard to pull off an everyman quality, even when you a look like that and you know you're gonna get it all done. It's
Hmm.
just such a thin line because he's never ever cocky. The people around him also kind of play an important role, like we were saying earlier. They're not bowing down to him. So that's all of those stuff. All that stuff makes him relatable, and you're kind of in for the ride. And yeah, I mean, he carries the movie pretty much. I mean, everybody is really good in the movie, but what you walk away from the movie is that stunt, which he's done so many amazing stunts, including the one that we just talked about. But for me, in my mind, when I think of Mission, when I think of Tom Cruise, I think of him dangling in that. And
Mm.
even though I've seen it like a million times, I'm still at the edge of my seat. That are you going to get too hot? Is your sweat going to drop and, light off all the alarms and blah, blah, blah? Like, there's something so powerful. And of course, it's a filmmaking, but it's really him. He's doing the stunt, right? I'm guessing.
Yes,
I
on the
actually don't
wires.
know.
Yeah, that was him hanging there,
Yeah,
which is tough, like just to
right.
have your core
Exactly.
strength to be that vertical. Or sorry,
Amazing. But to your
horizontal. But
earlier point, because he's doing it, you can really close in and see you're there with him. You're breathing with him. You're in that zone with him, and that's why it's just so powerful. So, yeah, that's what I take away from the movie and him. And yeah, that stunt is my favorite mission stunt, even though it's not death defying, but it's just something so electric and fun about that.
Oh, it's iconic, and I remember in the theater too, because that's also much like you mentioned in Dead Reckoning with I'm sorry, Final Reckoning with the submarine sequence where there's no music or anything. This was the same,
Right.
and you're just sitting there, and like you can hear the whole theater just like, what's, oh my God, is like you said, is this sweat gonna drop? Is he gonna fall? Is he gonna get seen? What's gonna happen? And that is just was such an amazing like communal experience in that theater. Just again, credit to Tom, but then really to Brian De Palma, who I just think does a fantastic
Right.
job with, he's a director who is highly influenced by Alfred Hitchcock. And this, I think, was very much the wrong man Alfred Hitchcock template that was in so many of those early Hitchcock films. And he just does it so well, and just really knows how to construct a scene. That one, and then for me, the highlight of this movie is the chase at the end on the train. I mean, that
Oh,
is iconic for me, just
amazing.
in seeing it in the theater. Like literally, I was on the edge of my seat, being like, "Oh my God!" Like the helicopter just went into the tunnel, and he's dangling there, and like, what's gonna happen? And that is still just brings me chills thinking about it every time I watch it. And that again is just credit to De Palma knowing, like Hitch, you got to end with some big stunt at a landmark thing like the Chunnel, and have your character who you think is this every man. How's he gonna get out of this? And he does and defeats the bad guys. And yeah, I think this movie is my second favorite of all the mission films after Fallout. It was my favorite for a very long time, and actually surprised that Fallout in my mind is now better than it, because it is just such a great film, even though the plot is confusing. But it doesn't really matter. Like even at the time,
Who
like I don't really know what's
cares?
going on, but this is so cool. Like Tom is just so cool in this movie. Like this to me was the Tom's the coolest guy ever. I never with Maverick in the original Top Gun. I don't know, like that just never spoke to me the way that this one does. And it's still, yeah, it's still a movie that I come back to all the time and just love. And also I just want to point out to the score. Got to give Danny Elfman one of his
Oh,
best scores. I think it is my favorite treatment of the Mission Impossible theme. It's just an all-round, just fantastic score that I also listen to a lot. I just wanted to also highlight that as well, just as another part of this film I love.
it's iconic, I think the Bond themes are incredible, but I think if there was like a list of like top five themes from the movies, like this would be in there for sure. And
Absolutely.
the other thing I also want to mention about this one is that, and this is true for a lot of mission movies, that they did a really good job like casting
Mm.
other actors that really hold their weight. Of course, there's the core team with Ving Rhames, who I love, and that's to me like that's maybe the deepest relationship like Ethan Hunt has in these movies, which is why I was so bummed by the way all that went down in the last
Hmm.
one.
Yeah.
But then also I think John Voight is a great presence in the movie. Like it's perfect casting and like you were saying earlier, these movies are about him, but they're also about these ensemble relationships. And from the very beginning, Kristen Scott Thomas, like you have some pretty heavyweight actors, and that continues throughout the entire series pretty much, which, kudos to the filmmakers and also Tom. Like he could have been like, oh no, this is my thing, I'm producing it, and it's going to be my show, and I'm just going to have like rando actors who are like lesser known or not that great. But no, he keeps bringing, from Philip Seymour Hoffman to Rebecca Ferguson in the later movies, like Simon Pegg. Like they're great character actors and even movie stars in their own right that are in these movies, which I think is important. It just makes all of it richer, and it just starts right here. I think John Voight is just so good in this movie.
No, he really is. And you mentioned, Ving Rhames. I think Jean Reno is great. So they really do surround him with all these fantastic, at the
Yeah.
time, kind of like I mean, not John Voight, but the rest sort of like character actors. And I think that helps also sort of make Tom not stand out so much as like the Superman, like a James Bond. No, we're surrounding him with
Right.
all these guys. And I still remember too the opening with having like Emilio Estevez, who's like a big star, like getting killed in like the first 15 minutes. You're like, whoa, like
Yeah.
anything can happen in this movie now. Like what, you're
It
sort of
still
questioning
shocks me, the
everything.
whole elevator scene.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, great. Yeah, this film is great. And again, we've covered it before, so I'll post a link to our previous discussion of this film, as long with the rest of the Mission films. I'll put those in there too, so people can hear about that. And yeah, that was our first loves. So why don't we get on to the masterpieces now? What is your masterpiece for Mr. Cruise?
All right. So my masterpiece for Tom Cruise is Magnolia from 1999, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, starring Tom Cruise, of course, Jason Robards, Julianne Moore, Philip Seymour Hoffman, John C. Reilly, a whole bunch of great character actors and actors in this movie. Quick logline: an epic mosaic of interrelated characters in search of love, forgiveness, and meaning in the San Fernando Valley. It's where do you even begin with this movie, but I'll start talking about Tom first.
Yeah, yeah, let's start with Tom.
Um, I think we've covered a lot already and talked a lot about sort of his intensity and his sort of, off-screen persona and also his screen persona. And we've talked about different variants of that intensity and commitment. I think this movie and just his performance is sort of dialing all of that up as much as possible, like the Tom Cruise charisma, his
Hmm.
intensity, but it's all underscored with this deep wounded character, and that's why this is my masterpiece because it's leveraging all the charisma and amazing stuff that Tom brings, but it's this really damaged and lonely and hurt character. And and you get to see all that. I mean, I don't think anybody else can actually pull this performance off in a movie that is already doing a lot. I mean, hell, there are frogs falling from the sky. There's a lot happening in this movie. But he ends up, I think, elevating and also grounding the movie at the same time. And for Tom Cruise, who's like the biggest movie star in the on the planet, to be in an ensemble piece like this, take on a character like this who's basically a sexist bastard,
Right.
but show this level of damagedness and vulnerability, but also maintain this charisma that you're almost secretly sort of wanting him to be okay. And then, as if all that was not enough, we get this incredible scene between him and his father, played by Jason Robards, where he's sort of losing it all and crying. And I don't think I've seen Tom so raw in a movie, and not as Tom Cruise, but as this character. So you get to see the full spectrum of him, even though he's not the lead in the movie.
Right.
He's gone for a big chunk of the movie, but I think it's a lights out movie star performance. It's a lights out character driven performance. So yeah, that's why this is my masterpiece of him, and I'm so glad this movie is in his filmography. I'm so glad he got to work with someone like PTA. So yeah, what about you? What's your impression of him in Magnolia?
Yeah, this is a film I saw when it came out. We'll get more into the film, but I definitely agree with everything you said about this just being one of his,
Right.
if not the best thing Tom has really ever done, in that he is playing probably the least likable character he's ever played. Even, we'll get to Collateral, he plays a bad guy, but you still sort of like him. He's cool. This guy is just such a, yeah, misogynistic, toxic person. You don't really want to be around him, but yet you do because there's still that Tom Cruise charisma. And it was interesting actually watching the movie this time, and it was starting to like dawn on me about like, so the character that he plays is this guy who's very wounded, has a bad relationship with his father, but then puts up this front of this super charisma dial up to 1,000, and just thinking like, is that Tom? Like, he also didn't have a good relationship with his father. He has this persona that feels artificial sometimes because it is so dialed up and so on and so charismatic and driven and all these things that
So positive.
so
Yeah.
positive, right? That are attracting as just a person wanting, oh my God, this movie star's got it. But is he doing this to bury something too? Which is clear in this movie, like Frank T. Mackey is an artifice because he cannot deal with this pain that he's experiencing in his life. And I just wonder if what maybe one of the things that gravitated towards Tom towards the role, or I know, because he wanted to work with PTA, and I'm really sure PTA wrote the role for him specifically, but Tom said he wanted to work with PTA. Maybe he did, and just put some of himself, which is something that Tom really never does ever. You never really know much about his personal life. You don't really want to. He doesn't want you to know. When he does, it sort of comes across a little artificial. It's like, oh, here's my wife, Katie Holmes, my kids, my wife, Nicole Kimmett. It's not something where he's like breaking down on Barbara Walters and really getting serious about who he is and what drives him. And I just wonder if somehow this movie is a glimpse into that in some way. Or maybe I'm just reading way too much into it. But on this watch, for some reason, I was
No,
like, wow, I
there's
wonder if this is why he is so raw in this. And yeah, that scene where he's crying at his dad's bedside is maybe the best scene he's ever done in anything. It's just incredible. Like,
yeah.
just an incredible performance.
It's incredible. No, there's truth to that because what I was reading was that in that scene, apparently PTA gave him a direction saying that, react as if you were, speaking to your father or something to
Oh.
that effect. And that's why you get the impact that you get. I don't think this kind of breakdown was written in the screenplay, if I'm not mistaken. So it's
Mm,
Tom sort of like
yeah.
improvising and kind of really reflecting on his own relationship, like you said. So yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And you're right, like it's his charisma and charm that you're still not only interested, but curious, rooting for him, but then also not empathizing, but sympathizing with the woundedness and the hurt that he has. And that's
Oh
sort of the
yeah.
classic character that you create, right? That you don't have to be likable, but the audience should, if not empathize, at least sympathize and understand, and it's not in the screenplay, it's all in him, it's
Mhm.
not written. Like there's no monologue that's told to us that, oh, this is what happened. I mean, you get some clues, but it's all in his performance. But you
Yeah,
talk
fantastic.
about the movie a little bit. I watched this way after it came out as I was kind of, getting into Hollywood movies in a big way, and PTA was obviously on top of the list. I had watched Boogie Nights, absolutely loved it, and wanted to see what he did next. And I had read a lot about like this was sort of his blank check movie that okay, you're in the big league now, go make your thing. And I remember like the first time I watched it, it was like a total assault on your senses of like there's so much going on, but I ended up walking away from it like really admiring it. That oh my gosh, like this person really brought all of themselves to this movie. Even though it's like frenetic and it's like an assault, like I said,
Mhm.
but it's an achievement, in his own right. And then it's not a PTA that I've returned to very often just because like how heavy and intense it feels. But rewatching it this time, and this is no hot take, like this is a very messy movie, and I felt that just the morning after I'd watched it even the first time, that this is student project kind of written all over it. At the same time, just watching it this time, even though I believe in those things, but at the same time, it's still kind of genius, I think, because what he's trying to say about humanity and the pain that we all carry and this sort of interconnectedness that we might have, and that how things are not really in our control, and at some point we just have to collectively heal and hit the reset button, and the frogs start falling and we just start all over. It's a pretty audacious, bold thing, and there are many people who've done that. I mean, I'm notorious to say these words of student filmmaker with Darren Aronofsky, who to me usually stays in that mold, even though I don't know how old he is, but he's still in that mold. Versus with this movie, there's that in it, but at the same time, he is able to communicate everything that he wants to. Like you can't miss it, And I can't say that about a lot of people who are given their blank check receipt to go do whatever they want. And he poured everything in it. All these characters, the music, the filmmaking, the performances. I mean, we've talked about Tom, but there are like six other top-notch performances from Philip Seymour Hoffman to Jason Robards to how so many other people. So I'm very glad the movie exists, even though it's flawed, but it's deeply affecting and moving at the same time. Um, yeah, that's my take on it. What's your impression of Magnolia?
Yeah, this is a movie I've always like really liked a lot, though it's hard to rewatch it often because it is about such painful things. I mean, these themes of
Yeah.
guilt and regret and bad, family relationships essentially is a hard watch, but I remember being blown away by this at the time and still think it is one of his best movies. I actually prefer this period of PTA than sort of where he went later in his career. And we'll see where he's now. He's a new movie coming out this year I'm excited for. But I just think it does feel like this is almost it's a blank check, but it also in a way feels like this is the last movie you're ever gonna make. So put everything,
Yeah.
put your whole philosophy, use every camera trick
Everything.
in the book. It's so showy, but I don't really get that film school vibe thing. I just get like impressed by all this. But it is a lot. There's a lot going on in here, not only with the story and the acting and the plot, but with the camera, like the camera moves they have are good. The angles are amazing. The color scheme in this is just so great. And I also just John C. Riley in this movie just gets me just such a like a simple sort of nice guy, just
Mm,
trying to do his best. And to me, that's really the heart and the way that I can watch this movie and follow him through it because all these other characters, I mean, he's damaged too, but their lives are just so incredibly depressing. It's like, kind of like sometimes hard for me to watch, but I just love his love story and when he loses his gun and he's like, "Oh, I lost my gun." And there's something sort of innocent about all that as the policeman. I love his interactions with the different, characters when he shows up at different calls. And I really do think I mean, the movie I think was inspired by Amy Mann, who was a big folk singer at the time. And I do really think it's, again, maybe you might think it comes off as film schooly, but I love that singers when you start singing. I think that to me is just like still comes out of nowhere and surprises me, but it feels again like bold and like I'm gonna do something big. And speaking of Tom, his voice isn't that bad. I was like, oh wow, this is Tom Cruise singing. We rarely ever get
I
this if
mean,
at all.
he
And it's like, ooh, this is kind of like, he's sitting in the car kind of singing. So yeah, the Amy Madness of it I like. And it was interesting too, like it definitely feels like 1999. Like it's very
oh
just
yeah.
the tone of the film, the way the something about this, I was immediately transported back. And that was a very good year, and I love 1999 a lot. And it was just sort of fun to kind of like go back in this time capsule and like feel like I was back in pre 9/11 America, 99, like dawn of the millennium. Even though the movie's not about any of those things, it's about nothing about that, but I just remember sort of seeing this back then. And yeah, it's a movie that I really like a lot. But
No, it's definitely very
it's
1999, and
yeah.
part of it also is that this whole like anthology filmmaking, right? Interconnected stories, a lot of that was happening, like Crash famously.
Right, right.
Uh, this is not a good take, but I'll say it because I thought of it.
Sure.
When they started singing,
Yeah.
which I loved, by the way, because it's so bold and audacious, it made me think of Emilia Perez,
Oh
which is
God.
I mean, it's nowhere near this movie, but it has those same germs in it, right? Like this is the big, bold,
Hmm.
audacious thing that we're going to do, where there are going to be multiple stories and people are connected and what have you. It's definitely in that milieu. And it made me think that we don't do this sort of stuff very often because if you did this today, you'll be looked at. Even if PTA made this movie right now, people will poo-poo it
Right.
because we just
Exactly.
don't do this sort of like showy, showcase of all of our feelings and our philosophy and our being in this sort of way. And performances like Julianne Moore,
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
just a lady, you call me lady. I mean, it's
Yeah.
out of control,
Yeah.
that performance, especially. So you don't do that. So that's another 1999 thing about it. At the same time, I admire it, and you can't help but not watch this and get totally swept up in its emotion and its filmmaking, like you said. I will say, I wish there was maybe one or two characters slash sequences just cut out and this movie would just feel tighter.
Hmm.
I don't know, some of the people just, even though they're very good, everybody's very good in it. Julianne Moore, I don't know, but she still
She's doing something.
holds the
Yeah.
place in this intense movie because how can you top everybody else? You top it somehow, and she does it. And then I think the one thing the filmmaking wise where this is obviously a choice. Like the moment a story angle starts to get into gear, we cut away immediately into somebody else.
Hmm.
And this just keeps happening over and over again, which is part of I know it's by design. He's trying to create this frenetic, you know, pace of a movie where you're sort of wrapped up in these people. But there were moments where I just was like, it was just getting that place and you cut it, and I wish we
Hmm.
could just have stayed there just a minute longer, 20 seconds longer. And because it's just so frenetic, and we have so many stories, so many people to handle. So that's to me is the film schooly part. Like there's so much in it. The rest, no, I admire it. You bring all the tricks in the bag. More is more, and I like it.
Yeah, I think that freneticness, I agree, is there. I sort of, again, would pull it back to like 1999. That style of
It's the style.
filmmaking just was, like Fight Club or even like American Beauty. I mean, not with the editing necessarily, but with the showy camera work and yeah, there's just something about that time that I have a nostalgia for, I guess. I was sort of realizing and watching this movie, but, I definitely agree that stuff is there. And I do also think it's a really good LA movie too. Like when I do drive down Magnolia, which is up in the Boulevard up in the valley, I always do think of this movie, and I do think
Totally.
it sort of feels, all of his, well, not all of his movies, but a lot of his movies are about, San Fernando Valley, and I think this one
Right.
is a key LA film, just to call out that.
I
But
totally agree. And
it's good to rewatch this. It's not a movie that I really like, but it's not. Oh, let's throw on Magnolia because I got 3 hours and
no.
want to be depressed. And hear Tom Cruise like yelling and then crying. Not really the a nice Friday night, but it was a nice Friday night last Friday when I watched it. So
I agree. Last thing I want to say, like you mentioned John C. Reilly, for me, the heart of the movie is Philip Seymour Hoffman.
hmm.
He's the guy who's trying to, the nurse trying to take care of this guy and obsessively trying to find Tom Cruise. And even when Tom Cruise is having his breakdown, you see in the background Philip Seymour Hoffman just crying and emoting. And he's obviously one of my favorite actors, like most
Hmm.
people. And it made me smile that Tom and Philip Seymour Hoffman got to share space and such a intimate kind of scene. It's pretty great. You know,
Yeah, this is the
it's my
first movie
money's
that
worth just for that.
no, it's the first movie that introduced me to him, and I was like, who is this actor? And yeah, he's
Ah,
one of my favorites. And fun that they got to work together again in the terrible Mission Impossible 3. But R.I.P.
all
Philip
right.
Seymour Hoffman. The
But
second
he's the
time. This is
best
the first
villain.
time they were paired together, though.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's my favorite villain in all the Mission movies. I will say that.
Okay. That I'm not gonna argue. Yeah, that yeah, I would. Yeah, I'll give that movie that. Maybe nothing else, but that his performance was fantastic
He's
in
great.
that film. Yeah,
Yeah.
very good.
All right. With that, what's your masterpiece?
So my masterpiece is a more recent film from Tom. It is Top Gun Maverick from 2022. This is directed by Joe Kosinski, starring Tom Cruise, Jennifer Connelly, Miles Teller. The IMDb plot summary: the story involves Maverick confronting his past while training a group of young Top Gun graduates, including the son of his deceased best friend, for a dangerous mission. So this is a film we talked about before, so I'll put the previous link. I think it was in our top movies of 2022. I think I put it as maybe number one or number two. And for me, this movie exemplifies everything that I love about a Tom performance, that I love about Tom Cruise, and then everything that I think makes him unique as a movie star. I think it's a very important movie in his filmography too, and really, the it's this sense of him coming back to this character, which again, a movie I did not really like, and I still don't. When I watch Top Gun, I'm like, this isn't really that good, the original one. But he's coming back to this character and adding like a pathos to him and a character arc to him, and you care more about who he is than you did in the first movie. At least I did. But he's doing all this without making it like, oh, Maverick is now a loser. He's a deadbeat. He's kicked out of the army and he's like sad and like drinking himself to death and has to like refine the Maverick inside him. No, he's still Maverick. He's still that guy who thinks he can do anything, pushing the limits of everything. Even getting in the way of his own career because he isn't, up to level of admiral. So I love that story choice that he's able to know this character so well and to know what the audience wants. Like we don't want to see a mopey Maverick or a mopey Tom Cruise who's like a loser and then has to regain himself because there's a version of that movie that you could make. But Tom decided not to do that and put in so much heart into this performance because of the relationship with Miles Teller. I think is something that is unique that you don't really see in movies like this. Honestly, that is so much. Yes, there's awesome fight or battle sequences and amazing. And we'll talk more about the film too. Some of my favorite just like sequences in a film, Tom Cruise film. But it really is about that relationship he has with Miles Teller at the end of the day, and I think he pulls off those scenes incredibly well too. And then just the last piece, and I know I usually like to just keep the films as films and not sort of talk too much about the meta stuff outside of it. But it sort of dawned on me like this is his first or his only so far $1 billion film. And it made $1 billion back then. It was a
Mm.
hugely huge hit. And looking at all the other films that made $1 billion, they're all based on franchises or big sci-fi like Avatar or whatever. There is no movie star on his own that is able to make a movie that makes $1 billion. At least maybe not yet. But he stands alone in that, and I think that is,
I mean,
incredibly
Oppenheimer and
unique.
Barbie. Well, Barbie is sort of IP too, but not really. And
Barbie's
Oppenheimer made a
IP, and
billion.
Oppenheimer never made a billion. It didn't
Came
reach it. It got
close.
close. It got close.
Yeah.
But you
Yes.
look at that list, and it's like, wow, like Tom really is the only person that
Yeah.
can do this, can deliver a movie star performance and go up against the Jurassic Parks and the Toy Stories and the Avatars and the Marvels and all those sort of things. And that to me is, and it's him, like he's selling the movie. It's not the IP of Top Gun as much as it is of Tom Cruise on the poster. And I think that is just a testament to how incredible of a career and a movie star he is. So to me, this had to be the masterpiece for Tom. There's so many things I could have chosen, but what are your thoughts on, starting with Tom in Maverick?
Yeah. I mean, you might have seen in a document, this was my first, and then I changed it because I was like, I should pick a different movie. I think you had something else first, I remember. And then
Yeah,
you
well, because
changed
you
it to,
picked
and we
this, and I'm
both
like,
had this.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they're so hard
How
to
can we
pick
top
Tom
that?
Cruise's masterpiece. Yeah,
So
yeah,
hard.
yeah.
No, but I think this is sort of a culmination. That's how I viewed it at the time, and I still view it after rewatching it more recently, that it's sort of a culmination of the movie star Tom that we know, who's committed and has this intensity and charisma and charm, but it also has layers of character and pathos, like you were saying. Like, especially rewatching this movie this time, I really felt that like there's like a woundedness to this character. Because in my head, when the movie came out, it was such a big hit, and we had such a good time at the theater, and all of that, especially in the time of it. Like I sort of lumped this movie and this character in the Mission series almost because they
Mm,
are stunts and it's Tom and saving the world. And rewatching it this time, I sort of was like, yeah, all that is true, but this is a different character. This is a character who's not a loser, like you said, but there's a lot of regret of
yes.
what could have been,
Hmm.
regret for what happened to Iceman, what's happened to his relationship with Miles Teller's character, what's happened to the relationship with Jennifer Connelly, what is happening with his own life. He's sort of stuck in time in a way,
Hmm.
which is kind of a vulnerable thing, even though people around him are rooting for him, but there are equal number of people who want him to fail or are skeptical, So there's a lot of regret and pathos, and there's like a seriousness to him, plus the charm and everything else that you expect from a Tom Cruise movie. So yeah, that's why this is a masterpiece performance from him. I'm so glad this happened. I don't think we get this last era, or hopefully not the last era of Tom, if we don't have this movie.
Hmm.
Um, and then to your point of like, yeah, saving the movies, which he totally did when it came out, just because this was a early post-COVID movie, the only billion-dollar movie, like you said, that's not a franchise movie. But unlike the last two Mission movies, yeah, he's doing amazing stunts and you root for him and what have you, but it doesn't have that self-seriousness of like, oh, I'm it.
Right,
Or
right. Hmm.
because there are enough people around him, where that have beefs with him or regrets with him and what have you. So I think it's a pretty smart choice for him as a producer, and I'm sure he contributed to the story pretty heavily. Like, if you're going to make a sequel after 30 years, it better be of some meaning. That too, at a time when this movie came out, like, and he held this movie from not going to streaming
Right.
for as long as he possibly could,
Yeah.
but yet not make it about him in a weird way, even though it's all about him. I think that it's just very smart of him to kind of bring this to the world in this kind of package, because this could have gone wrong
Oh, yeah.
in 20,000 ways.
Hmm. Right. I remember this was announced. I'm like, who is asking for a sequel to Top Gun? Like,
No
what?
one.
Like, no one needs this. No one wants this. That again, that movie I didn't think was even that good. You
No,
know? But in fact,
no,
everyone
totally. So
everyone
it's,
needed it.
yeah, everyone needed it. Exactly. No, it's, and then, last thing I'll say, and I'll flip it to you to talk about more about the movie, which is that we haven't seen Tom as like the elder statesman, teacher kind of person. And he gets to be that in this movie. The Mission movies are that kind of, but those are his teammates. They're not subordinates to him. And I was clocking in on that energy this time. Like he cares about these kids and he sees himself in Glenn or some of the
Hmm.
other people. And that's a very different energy. Like, okay, I'm now the elder statesman. I'm sitting in the front row of the Oscars, even though he doesn't come there, to kind of usher in the next batch. And that was fun to see him in that kind of energy and still hold his own in his old jacket. And then of course, we have to talk about his scene with the great Val Kilmer. Like that scene, it brought me to tears once again, as it did the first time I watched it, and now, of course, because we lost Val,
Yeah.
this again, they could have played that up, and made it cheesy or made it too sentimental or hokey, but it just feels so earned, that emotion. And once again, it's a master stroke. Like that scene shouldn't be in a movie like this,
Mm-hmm. But it
and it
shouldn't work.
is.
It shouldn't work, and it does. And I think you're right in that. Like Tom is, yes, he is the star of the film, but he's leaving space not only in terms of on screen, but space for emotions from other characters. Like Rooster, Miles Teller's
Right.
character, is going through a lot, and you care as an audience about that. And the Val Kilmer scene too. I think he does such a great job just sharing the screen and letting Val just be Val, one last time in this big film is yeah, it was very moving, especially like you said with this the year that we actually lost him. But yeah, I think this movie is a perfect film, honestly, and I put it
Yeah.
on a lot. It's just it's everything that the movie should do. There's the sequence in the beginning when he's training them for the first time, and there's the Who song playing, and they're doing the push-ups. Like I immediately just have a smile on my face for like 6 minutes through that entire thing. I'm like, this is just so like entertaining. And then the moments that are supposed to be really emotional, even especially at the end, the Val Kilmer scene, but just at the end when he gets back and him and Rooster hug.
Oh, I cried at that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm about to cry now, even thinking about it. But it's like those moments, and they're not like built up or focused on too much. It's a simple little thing. They see each other and they don't say anything, and they just hug, and you're just like, everything is sort of coming out.
That's
But
it.
both these characters have dealt with, and then obviously Anthony Edwards' death and everything, and you're just feeling that as the audience. So I think the best movies are ones that may put you on the edge of your seat, make you laugh, make you cry, make you smile. I think that is the ultimate form of entertainment, and so few movies do all of those things. They usually kind of pick a lane, and this movie to me just does that. I mean, Joe Kosinski just incredible job directing this too, and the cinematography with these airplanes. It's really funny going back and watching the original Top Gun, which I had around the time of this movie, and just seeing it so obvious they're in these fake sets and it's blue screen behind them with the dog fighting, and this it's like no, they're up there on these airplanes, and it just adds this extra sense of just awe. And again, it's like you can only see this in the movies, and I love that Tom is bringing you this, and special. It's a special film. And again, curtain call credits. Love it. That's the right way to.
They
And they do it in this too. And I think it's
do
a
in this
beautiful sort
too.
of send off to this franchise. Or maybe we'll see another one. It sounds like they're talking about it, which makes me a little nervous because like how do you top a perfect film? But I'll be there first in line to see Top Gun 3, whatever that's Top Gun 3 Rooster, or whatever that's gonna be called. But yeah, just such a special film that I think is important for Tom, important for Hollywood, and now important to me. Is one of my favorite films of all time now.
It's absolutely incredible. And I'll just stop everything else you said that speaking of like, show and don't tell, this is such an amazing masterclass in storytelling. Like there's like a mission, there's stakes here, what have you,
Yes.
but the way they explain what needs to happen, who needs to do what, they're explaining it, but they're also showing it. There's no, you know, constant throat clearing and talking about what's going to come. No, you're there with them and experiencing it. Of course, like the cinematography and such, and the special effects and the real stunt work that it is incredible, but it's also a masterclass in editing and storytelling that you're along for the ride, just not for the fun of hanging out with Tom and the other guys, but the stakes are high. You believe it. Um,
Mhm.
but then, in spite of all of that, they also leave room for just breadth, Like there's scenes of him and Jennifer Connelly, just quieter moments, just connecting. Like I want to go and watch a movie of them, actually. First
Yeah,
of all,
actually,
she
yeah.
looks incredible in the movie. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I was my jaw dropped the first time I saw her on the screen in the movie. Like, wow, she looks incredible. And they actually have chemistry. They have this
They
sort of
do. They do.
flirtatious banter between the two of them. And when they're like driving, she feels like an equal to him, like she
Hmm.
knows him.
Yeah.
And I've always loved Jennifer Connelly. She's like beautiful and sort of intelligent and smart. Like she can see through his stuff. And again, this stuff doesn't belong in this movie. It shouldn't work. It shouldn't be there. But kudos to the filmmaking team, Tom, Joe, everybody to make room for that, to it sort of completes the whole picture of who this guy is and the effect he has on other people and why it matters. It's all part of the story. And so that was incredible. sense of place. Like I've spent a little time in San Diego. I grew up as an army brat, so not that I was ever on air bases, but there's something very specific about
Hmm.
army bases and air force bases literally all over the world, and they capture that in this movie without saying it. You don't get like, oh, we are in San Diego and like big shoots,
Hmm.
overhead drone shots of whatever is happening. But there's something in just the fabric of the movie and the lighting and the sun and everything that there's sense of place, which again shouldn't happen in a movie like this. We would be happy if that didn't exist, but it's there and it adds to the richness, and that's why this movie is a perfect movie because they didn't phone in any area. They sort of hit the ball out of the ballpark in every area, which is incredible.
No, you're totally right. I mean, kudos to the whole filmmaking team, the writers, cinematographer, editors, direct. I mean, it all worked.
Everybody.
It's
It all worked.
and yeah, and again, kudos to Tom too, like you said, for fighting this to get delayed for 2 years. It's supposed to come out in 2020, and then it got moved for 2 whole years, despite Paramount probably like if it wasn't for Tom and it was some other actor, this would have gone to Paramount Plus within the first 6 months. And I mean, who knows whether it would still have been what it was, but I
I
just
don't
kudos
think
to him
so.
for doing that. I mean, I remember seeing this in the theater and
Yeah.
from the opening moment when I'm like, oh my God, are they actually just redoing the first opening scene? And then the song kicks in and I'm like, wow, they are. And like, I love it. Even though it's not
Yeah.
like I have nostalgia for Top Gun or like that, but I'm like, immediately I'm on board. Like, I'm like, wow, this is bold. They're doing it. I'm in. I'm sold. I'm in the danger zone. I'm back in the danger zone. Yeah, what a great film. What a great film. Um,
Another great movie theme. I mean,
oh
Tom has
yeah.
so many iconic movie themes, but this is another one. Like when the tongue
Oh
drops in
yeah.
the movie, you get chills.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great soundtrack. Yeah,
great
Hans Zimmer
soundtrack.
did a great job with Lady Gaga. Okay, so those are our masterpieces. So now it's time for our wild card choices for Tom Cruise. So Karan, I think you're up first. What is your Tom Cruise wild card choice?
All right, so my wild card is Collateral from 2004, directed by, of course, Michael Mann, starring Jamie Foxx, Tom Cruise, Jada Pinkett Smith. Um, Mark Ruffalo, Javier Bardem, people that I often forget are even in this movie, and then I'm surprised and wowed by when I rewatch the movie. Oh gosh, they're here. Uh, Quick log line: a cab driver finds himself the hostage of an engaging contract killer as he makes his rounds from hit to hit during one night in Los Angeles. So we've covered this movie before in our LA movies. It's, one of our favorite movies. But I was sort of watching this time, not that I haven't in the past, more so dialed in on Tom, and
Yeah.
I just couldn't escape the fact that, we've talked about all the Tom Cruise archetypes of intensity and charm and what have you. Not only is he playing a bad guy, which he's done in the past, but there's something so reserved and steely about this character, which I don't think I've ever seen him do that. Like even in, the most depressing, dark movies that he's done, like Born on the 4th of July, you still get the eccentricities or the charm or the intensity or dial up the volume, whether it's the crying or the screaming or whatever. Here you get nothing. You get he's a shark. He looks like a shark in his gray hair and his gray suit,
Hmm.
kind of just like prancing through all of LA. And kudos to him for taking this part, and then kudos to Michael Mann and just the filmmaking that there's no explanation for who is this person. There's no apologies of why is he leading this life. It just is. I guess what's common is that Tom is committed, as
Oh yeah.
always.
Oh yeah.
And he totally sells it. I think it's a total transformation, actually. I mean, we've talked about some of his other movies, which are incredible performances, but I think this character to me is the most unlike what I understand Tom Cruise's persona to be for those elements that I talked about. And that's why this is my wild card. Can easily be a masterpiece as well. But that would be lying about how I view masterpieces because they're meant to be about who that person is. This isn't, but I'm so glad that this is in his filmography, and we'll talk about the movie in a minute. But yeah, that's why this is my wild card.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely is, first of all, great film. We'll talk about that more, but for him to do something like this, which, not only is he playing a bad guy, but he also dies. This is the
Yeah.
only time he's ever died. I mean, Day After Tomorrow, he dies many times, but he actually doesn't die in the end. This is the only movie that Tom Cruise dies in, which is very unique for a movie star. Or maybe in the old days it wasn't, but he's still holding on to that, I will never die on screen. But he lets himself do that in this, and he is playing a bad guy. And it is, but at the same time, completely captivating. And you are rooting for him too. Not necessarily to kill the people he's trying to kill, but the fact that there's this woven relationship between him and Jamie Foxx's character where he's helping him out and making him into a better person throughout the night, even though he knows in his head, Tom Cruise, Vincent, that he's going to kill him at the end of the night. Like, that's what he does. He hires a taxi driver and then he's going to kill him, but he just can't help better this guy's life, push him to be the best version of Jamie Foxx that he can be. And unfortunately, he pushed him so good that Jamie Foxx ends up killing him in the end and sort of outsmarting him. But I think this cold intensity, it's like everything that Tom does, we're like removing all like the good parts of what Tom can do. So it is a incredibly unique character that I just he's this movie is great in all ways, but I really think the Tom Cruise performance is the movie. Like if you don't have
Yeah.
that Vincent character being sort of like likable, not charming though, but likable and magnetic, maybe that's about it. Like there's a magnetism to him
Magnetism to him. Yeah.
where he really, but and also the way that he feels unstoppable, not in the sense that sometimes he does, whereas Ethan Hunt, of course, he's gonna climb the verge and things like that. He feels like a Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees in this movie, and obviously, at the end, it turns into kind of a slasher movie, kind of. But the way that he kind of is, like you said, like a shark, kind of going through these scenes, killing these people, so like dedicated. He feels like an unstoppable force of nature, like a Michael Myers in this movie that you can't control this guy, and that's a very interesting twist on the intensity of Tom Cruise. So I love this choice as a wild card choice, and it paid off. I mean, it's a hugely successful film,
Right.
commercially, critically, and I think he should have been Oscar nominated for this. To be honest, I think that was a miss by the Academy, and yeah, just a great. I loved rewatching this. So great film. So
Totally.
so getting more of the film. What do you want to? Anything else you want to say about the film Collateral?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously covered it before, so we talked a lot about it, but it's an amazing LA movie. That's where you had it. Like I love a movie like this that's set in one night. I think it is one night pretty
Yeah, it's
much,
one
right?
night. Yep, it's basically
Uh
real time almost.
Real
Yeah.
time, which is it's super propulsive. Um I mean, there's some like incredible set pieces in this movie, particularly the one in Koreatown,
Oh
in
yeah.
this kind of karaoke bar sort of place, I suppose. Like it still blows my mind that they did this and how they shot it and how Tom is in this movie in that scene of like his body language, the way he's shooting people, and just the way the camera is moving around. Like it's an absolute masterclass in filmmaking. There's another one where Javier Bardem shows that sort of, I think, it's like a kind of Latin kind of
Mm.
bar. That's pretty amazing too. It's so it in a movie like this where you don't really expect set pieces because it's sort of one night kind of journey, but I'm always surprised by, like I said in the intro, that there are these other people in the movie because I only think of Tom and Jamie Foxx, but then they show up and they wow you and delight you as characters, but they're also grounded in these incredible set pieces. So it's a movie that kind of grows in my mind the more I watch it, even though in my head I just think of, oh, it's Tom killing, all across LA. So I love that. Um, I will say, I love Michael Mann, obviously. I know you do too. It's hard to top something like Heat in my mind. And there are elements of this that are incredible, but I always sort of feel there's some stuff in the plot vein where are head scratches for me of like why is Jamie Foxx still there and why doesn't he leave, and some of these things are just not very well explained, which is fine. But to me, the bigger thing that maybe it'll grow on me more and more the more I watch the movie is what Heat is so good at is that there's this sort of connection between Al Pacino and De Niro's character, where they're parallel people. They have respect for each other, and they kind of build. I mean, a lot is said between them, but also a lot is not said. It's sort of just in the way the movie tells a story that you understand at sort of at a very deep guttural level that there's a relationship between these two. And I feel like that is not explored fully in here to me. And not so much from Tom's standpoint, more from Jamie Foxx's standpoint, where at times I'm unsure of what is his character. Like, is he a subdued person? Did he have this negative, darker side in him always, and somehow now it's been flared out? But if that is the case, it's not really. I don't want explanation, but it's there's something in the performance that's to be missing, or in the filmmaking as well. So that's where I sort of pause a teeny bit. It's still an incredible movie, a great watch, handsomely made, very well acted, but I just think this would be a stone cold deep masterpiece the way Heat is if that element was just explored just a little bit more.
Yeah, I view the Jamie Foxx sort of arc as, and I think we might have even touched on this a little bit in the LA episode, just as much like LA, people come here to try to make it and have these dreams, and you have to have the dedication, not only just the want and desire and these plans, but you have to start acting on them, and that's what Tom,
Right.
right, is doing in the movie, right? He's very much a man of action. Whereas Jamie Foxx, oh, I want to have this limo company and I have this little, island I think about, but he's doing nothing actually with his life. So for me, I see that character arc as Tom sort of teaching him and pushing him to actually take action on things. And again, by the end of the movie, even so much so that he ends up killing him, on the subway. And I think Jamie Foxx, even on this rewatch too, because he's definitely an actor that's kind of fallen off and is not at the height of that he was, especially at this time. I do think he does a really good job of sort of being able to be this guy who is very meek and weak, but then once he becomes this man of action, you because he basically is forced to by Tom to save himself, but then also then to save Jada Pinkett Smith. I don't know. I just believe that he could be that harder
Mm,
guy by the end of the movie, and it's not like, oh, he was this wimp, and how is he now, able to be brave enough to do all the things he does in the last like 15 minutes. I don't know. I just I like his performance in this. It's very to me believable. And again, going back to the LA sort of piece of it too. I think that's a really just good allegory for people coming to LA and think they can just sit around and have these dreams, but not like pushing themselves to do it. And this movie is not Heat. Yeah, it's not Heat or Miami Vice, two of my favorite Michael Mann
mm.
movies. But I would definitely put this as number three for me. And it's the simplicity of this movie too. It's like it's very, very high concept. And Michael
Mm.
Mann movies usually are very, kind of thin on plot, or you can't really describe it in one sentence. Heat, what is it? Okay, it's like Cops and Robbers, I guess, or Miami Vice. It's like some guy goes undercover. It's like that's not intriguing. But oh, okay, a hitman gets into a cab and has the cab driver has to drive him around to all his hits in one night. Like, whoa, okay, I'll that
Right.
that pitch would sell in the room, and I sort of like kind of the simple pulpiness of that. And I think Michael Mann then elevates it through the filmmaking. But I kind of like how this is really one of his only movies that is basically
Mm.
just a B movie plot, to be honest. Like this could have been like a TV movie because that plot is such a hook thing. You don't need like a Tom or a Michael Mann or a Jamie Foxx to be like, oh, I'd see something that has that as a hook. And I just love that this movie does that. But then obviously it's Michael Mann, so it's just gorgeously shot. And like you said, the set pieces are yeah, some of the best stuff he's done in a filmography that has some of the greatest like shootouts in any film. That
Totally.
that that K Town shootout is so great. Like I'm like whoa every time. And then when Ruffalo gets taken out too, I love that. I love in movies when it's like the cop is about to solve the case and just gets killed, and then that whole plot thread is just done. That still just stuns me every time. It's
Yeah, it stuns me every time.
it's
Yeah,
a great film and really just a great Tom Cruise wild card. So kudos to Tom to deciding to do this, or Michael going to him, or them kind of working together so successfully as well. Because these are two very dedicated, driven, hard to deal with because they have their own vision type talent, and it's just very interesting that they were able to work
yeah,
together at all, and then produce a movie that is like this as opposed to them constantly fighting on set. Because Tom, even though he works with these guys, like he takes control over what he wants to do. And maybe
yeah. I
that's why they never worked
wonder.
together again. Maybe they didn't get along. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder what the experience was like. Because you're right, like these are the two most intense people in the same room, or at
Yeah.
least some of the intense people. Last thing I want to say is, we already touched this in the first time we covered the movie, but the score of this movie is so incredible. I've
Mm.
been listening to it again since I rewatched the movie. It's just absolutely incredible, like a great collection of music from a whole bunch of people. So both soundtrack and score both really really good as well, which is to be expected from a Michael Mann movie because he's had such a great ear for music, I think. So just want to call that out too.
Oh, he really does. And actually, this is not I have a lot of Michael Mann scores on my rotation. I don't have this one. I should track it down and put this into my,
Yeah.
rotation with Miami Vice and Heat and Last of the Mohicans and things. Because I do, the music is actually very good in this. So good tip on that. I'll get the Collateral soundtrack.
All right, so we are inching towards the final movie. So what's your wild card?
So my wild card for Tom Cruise is Eyes Wide Shut from 1999. So this movie is written and directed by Stanley Kubrick, who we just covered in a previous episode. So any Stanley Kubrick fans, if you're just joining us for this episode, one episode back, you'll have a lot more Kubrick discussion. But this movie is starring Tom Cruise and his then wife Nicole Kidman. So this movie for me, and there's a lot to say about the film, but I'm just why this is for me a Tom's wild card choice was, sort of what we've been talking about in terms of Tom being a very intense, in control guy who knows exactly what he wants to do, or if he doesn't, he's the one who's going to figure it out. We were just mentioning with similar to Michael Mann, right? In that sense, very driven and has this vision. And for this movie, he's paired with Stanley Kubrick, who is probably the most controlling filmmaker that has ever existed, or definitely one of them. And for, I think, probably the only time in Tom's career, in a very rare time, he completely gives 100% of control to Stanley Kubrick. This was not a collaboration in the sense that he might have had with Michael Mann, or that he'd have with some of these other great directors he worked with, the Spielbergs, and he's worked with some amazing guys, Oliver Stone and et cetera. But in this movie, he basically gave himself to Stanley. For 15 months, they shot this movie, and as part of this, he would not intend any other projects. And for people who are not as work in film production, or kind of know lengths of movie shoots, usually it's like a couple weeks. I mean, at most, in terms of production, at most, maybe several months for these larger pictures. But for 15 months, that's over a year that Tom and his then wife were in there, London, filming this movie. And that is something that is, I don't think Tom would ever give himself to anyone else in this way. And the other thing that I think makes this movie very unique is that it is his then wife, Nicole Kidman. And, Tom is an actor, even at that time, he's more kind of out of the tabloids and sort of try to staying out of his personal life, out of the limelight now. But even back then, yeah, everyone knew that he was married to Nicole Kidman, and they were like, oh, two big, celebrity couples. But it wasn't like they were letting people into their homes and, being, discussing again some major interview where they're talking about their lives and things. Tom never really was revealing in his personal life. And I think this is just really putting things out there of like, okay, there's this movie where
Yeah.
these themes are about a couple in trouble and jealousy and all these things. Like, are these real for Tom? Is this real in their marriage? Like having acting inside your with alongside your wife, which he done before in other films, but not in the way that this movie kind of deals with troubled relationships. I just think it very exposing. So I think this movie, even when I watch it, I love the film more and more every time I see it. But it's just very interesting seeing Tom so exposed, so given over control, and also playing a very weak and confused character. Like this movie's basically about him being cucked the entire time by a dream of something that didn't even happen. Like she's like, "Oh, I thought about sleeping with this guy once," and all of a sudden he spirals out of control and is like, "Wait, oh no, I'm this cuckold husband, and oh, I'm the victim of an affair," even though he wasn't. But he's not typically what you would see in a Tom Cruise performance, a Tom Cruise character. Right? So I think that is also very unique and interesting to see him in that state of just complete like yeah, embarrassment, really. Like he takes it so
Yeah.
personally, and that's so rare for him. So, well, there's a lot we can get into about the film, but just talking about Tom, that's why for me this is, his most daring decision as an actor to do this, and I think it 100% paid off. But, curious on your thoughts on Tom in the film, and then obviously there's a lot to get into with the film itself.
I know. I had not watched this movie up till now. I'd avoided it for everything that I'd heard about it, and I also felt like I needed to be ready for it. And I'm so glad that we had a whole Kubrick episode that
Mm.
prepared me to then watch this
Prepared
movie,
you
and I'm
for it.
glad that I watched it in this order.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, his final film. Yeah,
No,
that's
but
right.
you're right. Like I think it's a great wild card for him to take on this project, and like I alluded to earlier, I think this movie and this production like broke him in some way. Certainly broke
Mm.
their marriage.
Hmm.
There are, I'm sure, many other reasons for it, but this is clearly a big part of it. Which, I mean, hell, if you're with your partner shooting under a controlling director who's making you take 90 takes of just opening a door and walking in a room, sequestered away from home in a different place for that long, that'll end most relationships, I think. Not to mention, the most famous couple in the whole world, all the Scientology stuff. I mean, there's so much, but yeah, I mean, this movie is a big milestone. Like, I don't know what Tom Cruise and Nicole's careers look like if you don't have this movie, because it altered something in them deeply. Um, but then as a movie, yeah, watching it the first time, I definitely want to watch it over and over again. But you're right, like it's such a strange, odd movie, and we'll get into the movie more,
Yeah.
that it's anything unlike he's done. Like he's not the central character, even though he's pretty much in every frame of the movie.
Yep.
Not just the character motivation that you talked about, but you barely even see a close-up of him until much later in the movie. And to the point where at times you almost feel like, is this bad acting? Yes, you're frustrated, but all you're doing is touching your face. It's just so odd until it sort of becomes pretty clear that this is all a dream and it's not from his point of view, even though it is. And it's a performance in a movie that just stays with you. At least with me, I kept thinking about this movie for days after I watched it. Um, I will say, again, not to kind of put them against each other, but from a pure performance standpoint, I think Nicole steals the movie because just the way the movie's framed, I guess. So she gets to do a lot more versus we don't see Tom do much. Is not from his point of view. Like things are happening to him, but he's not the agent. People want to sleep with him everywhere, or people are making fun of him. I can't get past the fact that there are a bunch of like wild teenagers or 20-year-olds, whoever, who are making fun of him from being short and being possibly gay, which is once again so exposing and so true to the rumors that have, and probably his deepest insecurities himself, given his height. He's a short guy, everybody knows that, and all the gay rumors that were always surrounding him for the longest time. So yeah, it's a masterpiece of a movie, at the same time very odd, and I also can't shake some of the exploitative taste in my mouth of what these people were meant to go through in the making of the movie, and some of their own insecurities and relationship troubles, and all of those were being used and poked for the movie. I'm never really a fan of that, and the impact that it had on their relationship. And I guess now we are getting into the movie. Uh, and just how Nicole, even though she's amazing in the movie, but it's it's quite explicit, the stuff that she's asked to do with an ogre-looking man hovering all around you, with or haggard-looking man hovering all around you. I just kept thinking about that too after I finished watching the movie, that it's there's an icky feeling that I get with this movie. At the same time, it's kind of a genius thing. Like it's its own kind of a, I don't even know how to describe it. Like it doesn't feel like a physical object that you can tangibly hold on to. It has sort of this like not just dreamlike, but like almost like a smoke-like quality that it kind of enters your body and your pores. It has that kind of quality to it, and only Kubrick can do that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a hard way to describe what this film feels like when you watch it, and I think you're kind of hitting on it in a very, especially after one viewing, that's I think impressive. You're the sort of the adjectives you're using there, because yeah, this is a film that I saw not in theaters at the time, but I saw it around the time it came out, and obviously Kubrick had passed away, and there's all this allure over was the film finished, and is this a porno film? Like there are all these rumors because Kubrick is very secretive on sets. Um, so okay, what's going on? Tom and Nicole in it, and when it came out, it wasn't loved really. The critics were very, very mixed on it. It didn't do very well at the box office either. And when I first saw it, didn't really get it or really enjoy it that much, to be honest. And it is the Kubrick film that I come back to a lot, and every time I see it, it just gets better for me, and I start not understanding it, but just feeling it better and getting to the rhythm of what this movie is. Because unlike a lot of his other films, when we just covered Kubrick, like the first time I watch it, I'm just like blown away. Like it's like my soul got replaced by something else. Whereas this movie wasn't that. It's tricky. And I think that is the point of the film in the same way that Tom is navigating all these feelings about that he has of feeling insecure and what does it really mean? And I think a lot of the things in this movie too are really just amazing explorations into marriage and relationships of well, like, do you owe your partner your fantasies? And is that okay? Should you be fully open all the time with everything? Or instead, there are parts of you and parts of your desires that are just yours. And no matter what relationship you're in or how good or strong it is, you should never be sharing those things because of the unintended consequences that it has. And I think all these things are very like mature and interesting themes that hardly ever get covered in movies, especially in this way, because it's
Very
not like
deep
the movie
things.
yeah, it's not like the movie has a specific point of view per se about this. It's just exploring that state when you're sort of questioning your relationship or yourself or your own insecurities and where that can drive you. And did it actually take place? Like, I kind of feel at this point that it did. Like, I don't know. It feels so much just sort of like a dream and how it's shot. And yeah, there's just so many sequences of this movie that are just so, yeah, like make me feel uneasy, but in a way that I kind of like. It's you're sort of on edge the whole time, not like a horror movie on edge, but just like kind of creeped out or just unsure in the same way you are sometimes when you're in a dream and you're thinking like, wait, is this actually happening or am I in a dream? And then maybe you then wake up. And then sometimes I'm like, wait, like I wake up from dreams sometimes and I'm like, did that actually happen? I'm like, oh wait, no, that was a dream. And the whole movie, I think, is in that vein. It's that just before you wake up and you're like, this isn't real, or just when you wake up, you're like, wait a second, did I just have that thing happen to me? And I just love the state that it puts it in. And those are just sort of these inner thoughts and inner desires and inner feelings that about these sort of issues around trust and trusting yourself and trusting your partners. And I just think this movie does such a good job with that. But it's very hard to describe without seeing it, really.
Totally.
It's its own it's in its own register and
No,
it's like everything that Kubrick's done, but also like nothing like he's done. Like most of his movies just feel like him, but then not like him. And I think this one is that to a T, you know?
totally. I mean, we could have almost had this as a wild card for even Kubrick because he
Yeah.
typically doesn't delve with relationships to such a deep way, and this is all about that. Um, and then, there's a whole other piece of kind of sex and desire and this whole world that you see of rich, powerful people exploiting, others and themselves and again, you're not sure if this is even real or not, but maybe it is. And that's the whole element to the movie, which you could almost kind of look at that as a separate movie, but it's very interconnected to what is happening with the central relationship because it's sort of playing on what these people are feeling. It's almost like if you have like a storm brewing at home and there's a tornado outside, what does that feel like? Like you're dealing with this, but then from the window you can see, oh, something even bigger is coming towards us. And ultimately, that's what the movie in dream or not in dream resolves itself sort of that okay, even if this happened or didn't, we owe it to each other to give it a go,
Right.
and it ends on a hopeful positive note, and I think that has I don't think you would earn that fully if it were not for the external tornado of all the sexcapades and the exploitation and the model getting killed and all of that. It's because that's sort of like dialing up to if you don't take control of whatever you're feeling internally with yourself and with your partner, this could get even worse because
Hmm.
there are even worse things that are going around. That's at least that's how it lands on me. I will say, like the spelling out of that at the end in the Christmas store, though it was gratifying, it also took away from the movie because the movie is so delicate and transient, like we were saying earlier, almost like smoke like. Like I almost didn't want like those words uttered,
Mm.
It could have been a gesture, it could have been like it almost felt outside of the movie to me. And again, this is only my first viewing, but it surprised me that, oh, in this movie where there's been no frank conversation about anything, it's all been about feelings and almost the audience being like a voyeur in whatever is going on, to then be met with a very explicitly stated, piece at the end. And I don't know if that was a studio note or maybe this was done after he passed away. I liked it, but it also felt like it didn't need to be there in my mind.
Yeah, I sort of interpret the end of the movie, especially that scene at FAO Schwartz when they're there with their daughter and they're having that last conversation that you're talking about. It feels very real. The place doesn't feel like that alternate sort of dreamlike place. So it's almost like the movie's finally coming back to reality, and maybe that frankness too is like, well, this
That's a
is
good
now like
point.
the next day after the bender or whatever that you have. Boom, this is the cold reality. But even it's not like before the sexcapades or his whole night started. It still felt like a dream. The entire movie feels like that way, except for that last scene. Feels like a blast of cold water on you, and you're like, oh, I'm waking up from this. Now what do we do? What do we do now? And then she has that amazing final line about what, so we just got to go fuck. Or it's amazing. I love
Right.
that button on it. But that's sort of how I interpret that scene of like the one sort of bit of reality in the movie. So it is a little bit direct and unlike anything else in the rest of the film. But again, anything in this movie is up for, interpretation. But that's what I love about it. It really does most more so than a lot of his other films, at least for me, has been rewarded upon repeat viewing. And I
I'm
sort of see
sure.
different things in it and,
Yeah.
noticed, feel different things at different points in my life and different things I've been through. I was like, okay, I kind of understand this a little bit more now. And it's just, I mean, it's Kubrick. So like everything he does, I can kind of say as a masterpiece. But what makes this movie so interesting, this is obviously meant something to Kubrick too. He chose on purpose the two biggest
Oh yeah.
stars, the biggest couple in the world to put them through this. And that is just interesting and of like why like yeah, what was that trying to say? And obviously you couldn't get bigger than I mean
It's
he
exploitative, but
it
it
is.
works.
I know it is exploitative, and I kind of like that is what he is doing. And again, to Tom and Nicole's credit, they were willing partners in this, and they said, "Fine, exploit us then, because we get to work with maybe the best film director that has ever existed." And how often is
Yeah.
that you ever get that chance? And it's crazy sometimes for me to like watch Mission Impossible and be like, "Wow, like Tom Cruise was like in a Stanley Kubrick movie." Like it's sometimes I'm like, wait, yeah, he was this guy who's like dangling off this airplane, was in a room with Stanley, and he was, directing him. Just there's something about that of like the classic movies marrying with modern day, and especially with Stanley, because I hold him in some, separate kind of box. It's just like, whoa, as if it like Tom
It's
had
pretty
worked with Hitch
bizarre.
at some point. It's just sort of like interesting. Like if I ever met Tom Cruise, which I did see him once at a test screening, but if I ever actually like got to talk to him, that would probably be like just what was it like working with Stanley Kubrick? Like that's what I want to know because how
Yeah.
many people can really say that at that caliber? So
No,
amazing.
that's funny, and it's interesting. Like both of their careers, like it's almost like Tom after this, like tried a few. He was in that weird headspace because clearly broken by this experience,
Hmm.
trying out some weird movies, and suddenly was like, okay, no more of this. I'm just gonna do this, and we talked a lot about that. Versus Nicole really leaned into this. Like she's
Yeah.
sort of become this amazing kind of poster child actress of taking risks and handling heavy dark material is absolutely fearless
Hmm.
to go in deep emotional places, physical places, and I think it all started with this movie probably.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to see how their careers and lives have gone.
Totally.
On the other hand, she seems to have a pretty normal existence outside of the movies,
Yeah.
and it's the opposite for him. Totally abnormal outside the movies and totally normal and milquetoast in the
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah. It
So
just
odd.
he's such a fascinating human being, Tom Cruise. But I think you're really right in thinking this is a big hinge point and tipping point in his career that, and in personal life, obviously too, which is a very
Yeah,
great film. And I'd be, yeah, just interesting to hear you talk about it. I haven't only seen it once. And I'm curious just as you come back to this movie over the years,
I can't
what,
wait to.
yeah, like the different things that'll unlock for you as it keeps doing for me. And it's just such a puzzle piece of a movie in all the best and rewarding ways. That's why I love rewatching films, and this is one of the ones that definitely does that. So,
Totally. Speaking of rewatching, what do you want to see Tom do next?
yeah, this is a very interesting question. So we know that he's working with Inarritu, so he's going back to an auteur director who he hasn't worked with in a very, very long time, someone of that caliber. So I'm very curious to see kind of what that is going to happen. But this might be a boring answer, honestly, but I do believe, as McQuarrie and Tom have said in these interviews, that he is the only person that can make movies like Top Gun Maverick or Mission Impossible, that I want him to just stay in that vein as long as he can. As much as it'd be fun to have him go back and do like a Magnolia or even whatever he's doing with Inarritu, I think these big sort of four quadrant, get the popcorn, everyone is there, go to the movie theater, just be like, whoa, what is going on? If he's the only person that can really do that as a star, I think he sort of owes it to me. So, and hopefully he would agree because he's working for me. He's the audience. We're the
Right.
audience. We're in control here, and like so that again, it's not like the most interesting answer, but it's what I want out of one of my favorite actors of all time, if not my favorite. So, what about you? What would you like to see him do?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I oscillate between both of them. Like I want the big blockbuster movie too, but I also want him to kind of do something deeper and different, and maybe there's a way to combine the two. Maybe the Inari 2 movie, who I'm sort of mixed on. I mean, fine, but maybe there's a way to kind of create a, character drama that is a blockbuster. It can be done. So
Hmm.
here's what I would say. If
Yes,
anybody can do that, it is him, I think.
that is true.
You know, it doesn't have to be your A24,
Right.
character driven weird movie, which is sort of the talk of the town for one weekend and then sort of vanishes.
Hmm.
They've done other stuff too that's very good, but I think Tom can do something that brings people in, and but yet it's something deeper. So maybe this is that.
Well, again, we're in charge. We're the audience. So now he has to do both. So if he's listening, that is the next after the Inarritu picture, which I'm super curious about just what that is.
Very
And
curious.
as a huge fan of that director too, he's also someone who's like incredibly controlling. So it's just interesting that Tom is stepping back into that world. But now, then these are the next two movies he has to make. So there you go, Tom. We should get a piece of that box office. We just helped your career. So in terms of coming up next, why don't you tell listeners about the next episode, and then and after the next episode, we're taking a bit of a break. So why don't you give them a warning about that to not break their hearts,
Uh,
last minute. So
Yeah, so Wes Anderson has a new movie coming out, Phoenician Scheme. So we're going to be covering that, a review on the movie, but also share our top threes on Wes Anderson, who's one of our favorite filmmakers. So excited about that episode. And then, like you mentioned, after that, we're going to take a little bit of a break, but we'll come back in July just because there's travel and life changes that are happening in both of our lives. So, and yeah, we promise to be back with a bang. So we'll be
exactly.
back. And it's just
Yes.
a couple of weeks. It's not like we're going for, months and months. So
Yeah,
yeah.
re-listen to the episodes. I'm sure there maybe like Eyes Wide Shut, you listen to an old episode of ours and your new revelations will be revealed about, whoa, I didn't understand that before. So
Mm,
yeah, just take this couple weeks and re-listen to some old episodes.
exactly.
So again, hope you enjoyed our discussion of all the amazing films of Tom Cruise. There's so many. I mean, this episode could have been 4 hours long. But almost every film in his filmography is really worth talking about, except for Mission Impossible 3. But hope you enjoyed it, and make sure
The
you.
Mummy.
Well, I haven't seen that one yet, actually. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh on it until I see it, but probably that movie is also not good. But make sure to like and subscribe on our channel on YouTube, or we're on all podcast platforms as well. So make sure to like and subscribe there as well. And if you're also leave us a review, because that's a great way for other listeners to find the show and for us to get our show out there. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And Karan, we will see you soon in 2 weeks.
Seduce and destroy. See you soon.
Or maybe I should say mission accomplished. We did it. We did the Tom Cruise episode. Unfortunately,
Or
not
that.
under 2 hours, so we failed the initial mission. But hopefully, still still enjoyable to listeners. So
But I need you to trust me one more time. I'll do it next time.
next time, okay, next time.